sometimes this world is quite connected, and especially this dynamics of ours, where it is the ecosystem of anti-fraud, anti-money laundering, or anti-terrorist financing. Yes. So I'm so glad to have all of you here. You have actually made an active choice to invest your Saturday with us today and in this conversation that truly matters, and it is genuine and it is quite timely. So, and I think by the time we're done today, you will agree that the time spent today is well spent for you all. So, as a form of introduction, my name is Rabi Abaka Suleiman. I'm a senior intelligence analyst with the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit. I've worked here for over 7 years, and I'm here garnering experiences and furthering my expertise with platforms such as this. So, and today it is actually an honor for me to serve as your moderator for this session. I have a co-moderator and I'll introduce her later on. This is all exciting. So now I want to tell you something about today's title of this webinar and why I think it is quite fitting, right? So it says Beyond Borders. And when I read the title at first, I had to pause and think. And I want you all to think about it as well. Beyond Borders, the evolution of financial crime in a connected world. This is the title of the webinar, right? But honestly, it could also as well just be the operating manual of every financial criminal we have ever tried to track, because interconnectedness. So because Beyond Borders is exactly where they live. These criminals live beyond the borders. You can't see them with your normal eye, or like the Nigerians will say, with your kuru eyes. They have no passport control to worry about. There's no regulatory framework that spans every jurisdiction that they move through, and there's no single authority that can see the whole entire picture all at once. Because these people move freely, they move fast. And that is why we're here. And that is why rooms like these ones exist. And that is why discussions like these have to hold. And there's an African proverb I'd like to take us through, which is, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far ahead, you go together. There's a principle I like to talk about, and it's the principle of Ubuntu. And Ubuntu is an East African philosophy where I think there was a foreigner that came all the way to East Africa, one of the East African countries, and he gathered all the children in that village all and said there was a pack of sweets he was going to drop under the foot of a tree. And he said he wanted the first child to run and get it, to be the owner of those sweets. And interestingly, while he was waiting to see them all run together or run ahead and try to compete and pick the sweets, they all held on tightly to each other, held their arms so tightly and ran together. And when they got there together, they picked the pack and divided it amongst themselves. And when he came, he was astonished and he said, "What just happened?" And they said, "Ubuntu." And Ubuntu means we do not leave any man behind. So they said a win for one is a win for all. And that is why we're here today. Your law enforcement, your compliance officers, your investigators, your reporting entities, you are even a regular citizen of Nigeria. We're all here because we have a goal, which is to protect the integrity of our country and to protect our financial system. And so, because financial crime has evolved, right? Right now in my sector, in the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, I work within the emerging technology sector. And this came as a result of the updates, knowing that there are more evolving spaces like the virtual asset ecosystem, right? And so our response also has to evolve while this crime is evolving. So today's session is proof that practitioners, analysts, investigators, compliance professionals, policymakers, all of us coming together from across different sectors and across continents as well to think harder and share more and go further together is quite imperative and critical. So here is what the next 2.5 hours will look like today. We will begin with keynote addresses that will set the full landscape of how financial crime has evolved in this hyperconnected stage. And then we will move into a rich panel discussion where voices from across Africa and beyond will drill into the real cross-sector dynamics of money laundering, cyber fraud, and financial manipulation. And there will be time for questions. I know a lot of you are inquisitive and curious, and there will be time for those questions, and we're ready to respond to you. And I promise you, this panel will earn all of them. So my only question right now for you as participant is this: be present. And I demand that from you. You have to be present. Type in the chat, ask your questions, challenge ideas, and a webinar for you to know is only as good as the room it creates. We're not just here to tick it off the box. We're here to add value. And I like to tell my audience this: if you can live with just one point of action or one key action that you go away from this webinar, that is all. Our work would have been done. And this panel would have ended as well. This is a remarkable room, and I'm counting on you all. So before we dive in, it is my pleasure to introduce the program director for today's session, who will formally welcome us all to the session. Excuse me. He will open the proceedings, and please put your hands together virtually, or you can type your applause in the chat and join me in welcoming the General Manager of Rablow Woods, who is Mr. Nnamdi Emmanuel. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabia. Thank you for that warm introduction. Good day, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, amiable keynote speaker, esteemed moderators, respected panelists, from different parts of Africa, and our valued participants, colleagues, partners, and our friends of the Rablows Network. It's my great pleasure to warmly welcome all to today's webinar. And we chose the theme, Beyond Borders, the Evolution of Financial Crime in a Connected World. On behalf of the management and the team of Rablows Counterfraud Learning Center, I sincerely appreciate every one of you who has taken out the time out of your busy schedules, to be part of this important conversation. Your presence here today actually reflects, a shared commitment, to learning, collaboration, and the continuous strengthening of our collective response to fraud and financial crime. Today's theme is not just timely; it is very, very necessary, as I discussed with some of our stakeholders. Why? Because financial crime is no longer confined by geography, industry, institution, or traditional systems. Right? We now operate in a world where money can move across borders, right? Within seconds, in split seconds, a lot has gone bad. Fraud schemes can be executed remotely. Cyber-enabled crimes can affect thousands of victims at once. And, criminal networks continue to exploit this technology, this advancement, with controls, regulatory gaps, and human vulnerabilities. So this means that our response must also evolve. And I think that's why one of the reasons we are gathered here today. So as professionals, regulators, investigators, as I can see on the call already, compliance officers, risk managers, law enforcement, and maybe fraud fighters in general, we must begin to think beyond borders. And that's the purpose of this conversation. We must understand how financial crime connects across sectors. Just like our moderator mentioned, it's an opportunity for us to have this deep conversation, and go back, exchanging value. At the end of the day, we want everyone to leave here with something very, very tangible. So at Rablows, our mission has always been clear. We want to raise capable, ethical, and future-ready fraud fighters across Africa and beyond. And we do this because we believe that knowledge is not just a professional advantage; it is a defense mechanism. So the more informed you are or we are, the stronger our institutions become. The more connected we are, the harder it becomes for fraud fighters or fraudsters, to exploit the gaps between us. So today's webinar has been designed, to provide insights, provide thought-provoking conversations, that are very, very practical, around the changing nature of financial crime. And I want to indulge every one of us to, pay good attention. I encourage every one of us to stay engaged, listen actively, ask thoughtful questions, and take away lessons that can be applied within your various organizations and your professional role. To our keynote speaker, moderators, panelists, we are deeply grateful for, always indulging, always, accepting, to take up such tasks, despite your busy schedule, despite your, all that you have to do. I always see this willingness to always contribute, to platforms like this, and it gives me serious joy. To our participants, thank you also for trusting Rablox as a learning partner in your professional development journey. So as we begin today, I hope today's session inspires, deeper thinking, stronger collaboration across Africa, not just within your zone. Let's begin to look, beyond our comfort zone and see what we're able to, do. Once again, I welcome you all to this webinar. Thank you. And I wish you all a highly impactful and engaging session. Thank you.
I think I want more of a round of applause, a virtual applause for Mr. Emmanuel. Thank you so much. That was such a great way to start our morning and to open it up. And now it's time to get right into it. Our theme for today, which we've mentioned twice already, Beyond Borders, the evolution of financial crime in a connected world. And I want to take just 30 seconds or thereabout to tell you why this theme isn't just relevant, but it is actually urgent, it is critical, and it is vital. We live in a world, and I would like to paint a picture for you all today. I'm a storyteller, and I like to illustrate with the stories I tell. You live in a world where you have fraudsters in country A, let's say country J, who can launder money through a bank in a matter of seconds to another country B. Then convert this cryptocurrency, convert this fund into cryptocurrency in a third country, and then actually spend this money in a fourth country, all in the same afternoon. What am I saying? All in the same hour, actually. So live in this kind of world where organized criminal networks have a better understanding of regulatory gaps than some of the regulators trying to close them. What do you think would happen? They will always feel like they are 10 steps ahead of us. And so the people here in this virtual room today, I consider us all the front line of response. And that is why we're having this conversation. So we're going to have this, and I couldn't be more excited than to have it with this group of people and the panelists and even our keynote speaker in this particular morning. So without further delay, we'll begin all of this conversation as it should, and we're going to start with a keynote that will frame everything that follows. So our keynote for today needs little introduction, but because she absolutely deserves one, I'm going to go ahead and give her one. I'm going to give her the best. And this is going to be backed up by a saying by Warren Buffett that it takes 20 years to build a reputation and only 5 minutes to ruin it. The woman you are about to hear from us today has spent the better part of 2 decades doing the very opposite of that. She's been building systems, cultures, frameworks of accountability that protect institutions and the people those institutions are meant to serve. Adesola Osuji is a governance, risk, and assurance leader with over 20 years of experience spanning internal audit, fraud risk management, investigations, compliance, and organizational governance. She currently serves as head of internal audit at Save the Children in United Kingdom. And before anyone makes the mistake of thinking that that sounds like quite the role, let me be clear. She has strengthened governance frameworks across some of the most complex institutional environments in the world. She holds a Master's of Law an LLM, and carries an impressive portfolio of professional credentials. And I'm going to list them all. We have the time. She's a certified fraud examiner. She's a chartered internal auditor. She's a certified information systems auditor, a lead auditor of AI governance systems. She also serves as a trustee and board member in both the United Kingdom and Nigeria. And she's also a respected speaker and a writer on governance, fraud prevention, emerging technologies, and organizational effectiveness. In short, she is precisely the right person to set the intellectual stage for everything we're about to explore today. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish all of you could even stand up where you are now. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome to our keynote speaker, Ms. Adesola Osuji.
Thank you very much, Ravi. I think you're far too kind with your introduction, but thank you anyways. And thank you to all who have taken the time to join this webinar today. And so I'll just jump right into some of my thoughts as I was preparing for this webinar. I think this is probably one of the most difficult conversations I've prepared for because I struggle to find what aspects of my experience, to lean into for this conversation. And so what you'll be hearing me say today, and appreciating that this audience is cross-cutting. So I understand we have people from law enforcement, financial services, and all over the second sector, the third sector, all in this room. And so I'll try to navigate this conversation within time and hand over to the panelists. And I'd really like to thank the panelists as well. I'm looking forward to an exciting conversation from various points of view. Is it okay to share my screen? I just have a couple of slides a little more than a couple of slides to speak to. Is that okay?
Yes, you can share your screen. Go
Fantastic,
ahead.
fantastic. So let me jump right into that very quickly.
Yeah, we can see your screen now. You're muted, please. Still muted. Let me get.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I was just saying that, Rabia, you just painted an interesting scenario, and I was going to invite you all to walk with me through another scenario. And this is a scenario that, I have seen across not just the banking space, but even in the space where I currently work. Now, I want you to picture that at 9:14, the finance officer in a distant location in a let's even say a finance officer in a mid-sized organization, even a mid-sized organization, the finance officer receives an email from the email address of the MD, says urgent vendor payment. I'm in a board meeting. Move XYZ amount to this vendor. And that email came in at 9:14. By 9:26, the finance officer gets on the laptop and moves the email instantly. The funds have left the account. By 9:40, the funds move from the first account to another account in a different country. And by 10:15, about 1 hour later, the funds move from that second account in a different country into a wallet. into a wallet that doesn't answer virtually to any government on earth. Excuse me. What's interesting here is that nobody broke into a building, nobody has broken a lock, nobody has even spoken to anybody, but money has moved. This is not an outlier. This is not something that would not likely happen. This is what could happen on a typical Tuesday while we are having our morning coffee. And so why could this happen? Why could this happen? 20 years ago or more, when I got into this space, the financial systems, the systems that we had in place created natural frictions that reduced the likelihood or the success rate of some of these kinds of things. At that time, you had frictions around the need to have physical proximity between the fraudster and the victim for a fraud incident to succeed. In addition to that, the very nature of financial transactions meant that it would move slower. In fact, in the Nigerian context, and I remember at that time, Nigeria was probably one of the countries that had the fastest financial instant payment systems at that time. Even developed countries, you needed to use cash, you needed to use checks, and even bank transfers would take a day to settle, even in countries that we look at as evolved or developed countries. And in addition to that, there was a lot of effort around ensuring that there was a transaction trail, a paper trail for every transaction that happened. And so whether for good or for bad, the friction in the system at that time necessitated that fraud had to happen in a particular and perhaps slower way. But over the past 2 decades, that has changed a lot. And so we're looking at transactions moving in seconds. We're looking at transactions moving from your phone, even in environments where you don't have a lot of internet penetration, you have alternative ways to move money instantly. And so there's no limit to who can be a victim of fraud, whether you are in a distant village in, for instance, Goza, that has limited internet capacity or internet penetration, or whether you are in a very, very cosmopolitan city, you can't be this victim of fraud, and you can't be the fraudster. In addition to that, the fact that money can move in seconds across different payment channels is also the fact that crypto has now penetrated the banking system for good or for bad. Now, we were preparing and building systems around traditional systems, but we're seeing that crypto has come to bypass our thinking of what traditional systems are. And then, of course, we talked about the need to have physical proximity between the fraudster and the Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, sorry. So I think there was a glitch, yes. So, and then of course we talked about the need for proximity previously. So, the victim needed to know the fraudster, or the fraudster needed to have profiled the victim in a certain way, facilitated by physical proximity. But that is no longer necessary with the advent of social media, with the advent of artificial intelligence. And we'll talk more, and I'm sure the panelists will dive into that a bit. But so sorry, yeah. But let's look at what is anchored in the numbers. Let's look at what the numbers are telling us. Every year, between 800 billion and $2 trillion is laundered every single year, and that's 2 to 5% of the global GDP. And if you look at this number, what struck me with this number was the fact that this is perhaps the size of an actual country. This is actually the size of an actual country. So meaning that there are countries that their entire GDP could be laundered. And so let's look at what borders we are navigating. What are these borders that we are actually navigating? We are navigating the borders around geography, physical geography. We're navigating the borders around the digital rail, and we are navigating the human border. Think of them as 3 factors that we need to keep in mind when talking about this conversation. Let's talk about the geographical border first. And around October last year, Nigeria got off the FATF grey list. And that's thanks in no small part to all of us and the work we are doing in this room, particularly people in certain sectors. And you'll find that on the African continent, you'll find that, and again, to be fair, countries around the world keep going in and out of that list. And so it is my view that there will never be a time where there won't be countries on the grey list. There will always be countries on the grey list. There will always be countries striving to comply. And what perhaps is interesting for me on reflection is that countries being on the grey list, sometimes it's not because the countries don't want to comply. Sometimes it is also because of the very quick evolution of financial crime. That's one. And perhaps the heightened sophistication of financial crime that is evolving even faster than countries can move. And so you'll find that countries thinking about their own geographical borders alone are not able to respond as quickly as they might want to. And so that brings us to the second important point, which is the digital rail and the very, very fast uptake of cryptocurrencies in the world today. Now, crypto-linked illicit flows worldwide last year was put at 158 billion, which is more than triple the amount in 2024. And what this is telling me is that the sharp rise over just 1 year of illicit flows around cryptocurrencies is that it is becoming a very attractive mode of moving illicit funds. And so when we spent many, many years building fences around our traditional banking systems, and if you remember, over the years, a lot of the FATF recommendations have been built around traditional banking systems. The criminals have just very simply left those traditional systems and skirted around it to facilitate financial crime. And then when we think about the human border, and if you think about the scenario that I invited us to think about, when I started speaking, that scenario is centered around a very, very common fraud type that cuts across all sectors, and that's business email compromise. Now, the total reported cybercrime loss as of 2025, according to the FBI, was $20 billion. $20 billion in 2025 alone. Losses attributable to business email compromise alone was put at $3 billion. And that tells us how critical this is, and probably the reason why I have used it as the scenario. Now, what was interesting for me is that this year, the FBI has now created a category particularly for AI-enabled fraud. That is fraud enabled by audio and video manipulations using AI. And that area alone, we are seeing at least $893 million lost to fraud using AI-enabled functionalities. And so what we are seeing here is that between 2023 and 2026 or 2025, which was the cutoff point for this survey that was done, we are seeing that 40% of all business email compromise attacks was or involved AI-enabled capabilities. So meaning that fraudsters are no longer just putting in effort to commit fraud, business email compromise fraud, for instance, using and so if you even think about it, in those, not in those days, but over the years, you'll find that, when we're advised to look out for red flags of business email compromise fraud, one of those red flags you'll find is, oh, you'll see bad grammar, you'll see that the email address doesn't look right, you'll see that the look and feel is not aligned with the organizational culture or the way the organization speaks. You'll see that the email signature is not correct. AI has come to take care of all of that. And in addition to that, the AI tools available are democratized, meaning that they are available to even the most uneducated, unlettered, non-English speaking, even non-French speaking person all over the world. AI has come to democratize access to tools with which fraud can be committed across borders. And so it is no longer the case that a fraudster who lives in a jurisdiction that doesn't speak the same language as a victim will be discouraged. No, AI has come to take care of that at the click of a button. And so if we look at an interesting statistic that I came across, the UNODC just published and said that it is only 1%. So in all of these things we are saying, even the stats published by various governments, the UNODC is saying that less than 1% of illicit financial flows worldwide are ever detected and seized. And so even for all of the effort that we are putting in today, that just makes up a drop in the ocean of the fight or the success of the fight against fraud. And for me, what came to my mind, looking at this piece of statistic is that while it may look like it's just a drop in the ocean, while it may look like a lot still needs to be done, and if I'm being honest, it sounded a bit discouraging to me. What this tells us is also that there's a lot of opportunity to make impact in the fight against fraud. And so what exactly are those things that we can think about doing? And so 3 things top of mind for me in this conversation. One is collaboration. And, it's interesting to see that even as we say that fraud and the fight against financial crimes is cross-cutting, perhaps, maybe that's what the panelists will tell us today, that, the fraud, the financial crime conversation is across borders. You'll find that collaboration is not moving as fast to meet up with the cross-border nature of financial crimes. You'll find it interesting that even within borders, even within geographical borders, you don't find the kind of collaboration you need for whatever reason, across agencies in those geographical borders, across sectors, even in those geographical borders. And so one of the key, most critical factors is collaboration, not just across borders alone, but even within borders, across sectors, across agencies, and across whatever it is. Whether there are frictions or tensions, and acknowledging all of those frictions and tensions that exist, political push and pull and all of that, it is critical to start to center collaboration. Fraudsters no longer think about financial crime. Money launderers don't no longer think about financial crime as a border-specific activity. And for as long as we continue to tackle it in that silo, we would always be behind. The second piece is cross-training for people in that space, people like you and me. At that time and over the years, we have seen a lot of specialization. We have seen a lot of people say, you know what, I'm an expert cybersecurity person, I'm an expert AML specialist, I'm expert in forensic accounting or fraud investigations. But we'll see that one fraud incident cross-cuts all of these. So you see elements of AML, of money laundering, you see elements of cybercrime, you see elements of forensic accounting, I see elements of fraud investigation in one incident, and perhaps many other aspects, all crystallizing in one fraud incident. And so in fighting fraud, particularly because of the way financial crimes have evolved, it's important for we also in this space to start to broaden our specialization. We can no longer afford to say we are specialists in one area. That's not to say that there might not be heightened interest in one area, and it doesn't mean we may not particularly prefer an area, but we must have training and sight of the various aspects of financial crime to be able to succeed. And thirdly is the component around tech and people. We must use technology to fight technology. That is the only way we can succeed. These tools have been democratized for successful financial crimes, but these same tools have also been democratized for the fight against fraud. And so with the right safeguards in place, we must quickly embrace technology and use it to fight fraud. And this point around technology and embracing the use of technology around and AI to fight fraud can be a 1-hour conversation at least. But I'll just maybe leave this with us that it is important for us fighting financial crimes, in my view, to embrace the use of technology, put away the fear, and embrace the use of technology to fight the technology-enabled fraud. And congratulations to everyone who is already doing this. Correlated to this as well, and perhaps even more important, is the component around people. The component around people, regardless of what technology or how technology has evolved. And we've seen technology evolve over the years. Things that didn't seem possible are possible now. And things that we think are not possible now are possible. And I firmly believe that in the space of technology, whatever we think is possible is just the beginning. However, what has remained constant over the years is the people component. Whether you're talking about AI and the human in the loop, whatever area you're looking at, what has remained constant is the people. And you find that reflected in the results of surveys all over the world, including the survey by the ACFE and the FBI. A lot of surveys tells us that perhaps the human is the most critical component in the fight against financial crimes. And if you think about the example, the scenario I gave in the morning, you will see that play out. I would like to leave a couple of minutes for questions or comments. Now, financial crime no longer has a border, and neither does the fight against it. And that is what I would like to leave us with today. Financial crime no longer has a border, and neither does the fight against it. If we take, and triangulating with the people point I made in the previous slide, if we take the scenario that I gave at the start, the finance officer having her morning coffee and receiving an email from the MD, what is that one thing that could have changed the trajectory of that evolving situation? In my mind, the one thing that could have very easily changed that trajectory would have been to put a call through 1 minute call to the MD using a number that was already available, put that call to the MD, confirm the transaction, and that will stop the cascade of activities that followed after that first email that came in. There's a lot to say on this point or around this point I just made, but I'll just leave us with that point at this time. Thank you all so much, and back to you, Rabia.
Thank you so much, Adesola. That was absolutely brilliant. And just to go ahead, I would like to just hold you to something that you said about having an opportunity to make an impact. And the number one thing you mentioned was collaboration. And then we see it every day, because in my line of work as an FRU, we see it every day where cases get solved, the flows of transaction are traced, especially if it's virtual asset, because we have chain analysis through, and some networks get dismantled. And then all of these things almost never happen in isolation. They actually happen because someone actually picked up the phone and then decided to share the intelligence and actually trusted the process as well. So collaboration is key. And I would like the audience to actually drop their questions. We have a few minutes for her to take questions. Drop it in the chat. We want to get as many as we can. But then while we're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and ask the question, because I genuinely want an answer from you. And because you spoke about AI, artificial intelligence. And so I want to go deeper into that. We're seeing artificial intelligence deployed on both sides of this fight, the good, the bad, and even the ugly as well. So, and criminals are using this to, for instance, generate synthetic identities. We see them generating that, automating their phishing mechanisms, and they're moving money faster than any human compliance officer can actually flag it, right? So, and on our own side, we're now using it to detect anomalies and then transaction monitoring, typologies development. So my question is this: in your experience and observation, are we winning this race? Like, is the AI we're deploying in compliance with the AI being weaponized against us? Or are we, if we're being honest, still playing catch up with them? That's my question for you.
That's an interesting question, Rabia. And so I'll first of all start by saying that I mean, in this space, and so far, I wouldn't say there's, and again, with every sense of regard and respect for every AI native on this call, I wouldn't say that there's anyone that can safely call themselves an expert in this conversation around AI. But so, and again, what I'll be saying here is not backed by any data. It will probably be anecdotal at best. But in my view, I think that in the fight against AI-enabled fraud, I think we are still playing catch up. I think there's so much that is happening out there that we are not even aware of. I feel like one of the factors as well is that decision makers still have their heads buried in the sand. I feel like around this conversation as well, there's a reluctance to change culturally some of the cultural preconceptions that we have had over time. And also it's just the sheer number of people who are even moving into the financial crime space because AI has now democratized access to the tools that you need to successfully commit financial crime. So are we winning the race? In my view, anecdotally, I think it is no. I'm happy to be convinced otherwise. But in my view, I think we are still playing catch up. Yeah, that's my view.
Okay. That's an interesting take, actually. So does anyone have question? I think I will let a few questions, like 2 to 3 questions. You can unmute yourselves and ask her directly, and then we'll take the rest of the questions in the chat box. Let me
I
see.
think there are a few questions in the
Good
chat.
morning. Good morning.
Yes, please.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Ezekiel.
My name is Ezekiel, and I thank you for this training or session or webinar. I was trying to join in, but at least I made it to join in. I'm curious. The Web3 and the crypto fraud, all of this is beginning to look like as if Web3 is weak, crypto is weak in terms of the recent frauds that are happening. From the largest one in 2022, the ones in April, the darks, and all of the likes. The one that the drift protocol and all of the like. So my own question is AI, yeah, and machine learning. Where's the nexus, and how does that solve fraud? How does that you know um, make sure that the Web3 ecosystem, there's a saying that the Web3 ecosystem is only as strong as its weakest security layer. So where does AI and machine learning comes in really? Because all of these are saying a lot to the investor community, saying a lot to what people think about this crypto space. If the fraud keep happening and we are seeing losses, a lot of losses, it does not tell. It also tell a bad side to me. But I want to understand, where does AI and machine learning helps in detecting fraud? And I mean, what are the things that are in place to really curb this solution for them happening? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And maybe Ezekiel, I'll apologize first. I'll start by apologizing to you. I am not really a Web3 expert at all, but I can speak a bit around how machine learning and AI can help us reduce the incidents that would happen and the impact. And that's a wider conversation, but machine learning and AI are tools that can be deployed on existing systems or maybe on its own as well to help prevent and detect fraud more efficiently. And what I'm saying, I mean, to me, as I say, it sounds really obvious, right? But I think that to the extent that those are tools that are also currently being used. And when we think about it, whether it is the AI age, whatever it is, those same tools can be deployed by fraud experts, people in the financial crime space to reduce the impact and likelihood of fraud. For me, the only challenge I'll probably, from your question, Ezekiel, the only challenge I would really like to put out there to all of us here is that as we listen to conversations, maybe we can pause and reflect in our day-to-day activities. How have we uptaken safely the use of AI? Machine learning has been here for many years. 12 years ago, when I was doing something around fraud management in the Nigerian banking space, we had machine learning fully evolved. But how are we uptaking in the day-to-day fight against fraud in our various organizations? How have we practically uptaken the use of AI beyond using it to summarize documents or look for links or whatever? How have we consistently embedded the use of AI in the work that we are doing every day? Perhaps that's the challenge I would leave with every one of us from Ezekiel's question today. Hope that helps. And I'm sorry to have also thrown a challenge from your question without you inviting one. Back to you, Rabia.
Okay, so we have like 3 more questions, but I'll just read out 1 or 2. I'll take 2 for now. So Ms. Stella Paul said, financial crime often transcends national borders. So what practical steps can regulators, financial institutions, and corporates take to improve cross-border information sharing while still complying with data privacy laws? That's the first question.
Thanks, Stella. And I think that's a really good question. And I wish I also knew the answer, because you said steps. But if there was one thing that all of these players can do, if there was only one thing that one of these players can do, it is to define a shared objective around this conversation. Everybody, because I think that's where it starts from, right? We need to all sit down and define what is our shared objective. Because when we have a shared objective, then everyone can, in their various areas, then work together to achieve it. You can't have regulators being, anyway, not to sound judgmental, but we just need to have a shared objective. I think that's the foundation, where there is a room where where there is a platform that exists, where these key players can come together and agree what the shared objective is. Everyone can then go away to work towards achieving that objective. And the conversation around data privacy as well is only to the extent that to which regulators have set it. So if regulators have said this is the boundary for data privacy, it will remain the boundary. But if data privacy regulators also get into the conversations and also look at access to data as a key factor to fighting fraud, I think, the conversations will be more robust and some of these bottlenecks would loosen up.
Okay.
If it's okay, Rabia, before you take the other question, there was one question in the chat box I feel one start might have given the wrong impression about, and that is Abraham Udu is asking.
Yes, I was about to go into that. Go ahead.
So 1% of illicit financial flows get recovered by way of asset recovery and seizures. Does it mean we haven't done our part well, or that is all a charade in which law enforcement agencies don't actually get on all the intels FIU churn out of the FIUs? So I think there's a broader conversation, right? I don't think the 1% tells the entire story. And that's because part of the start as well is that, or part of the factors we need to keep in mind is that it's not that people don't know what to do to stop every single fraud incident from happening. But the cost of stopping every single financial crime, for instance, from happening will then negatively impact the day-to-day running of life. Day-to-day running of business may impact people's fundamental rights and all of that. So this 1% start does not in any way mean that people are not playing their parts. People are playing their parts. There's also the factor that, we really, really need to do more. But embedded in that is also risk acceptance and risk tolerance levels. Embedded in that as well is also the need to facilitate e-commerce, the need to facilitate living life the way we currently know it. So I don't know if that gives a different spin. 1% that I shared is not the entire story. It doesn't mean people are not, FIUs are not, doing what they need to do. That start is just one piece of the story. And there's a lot as well that goes into that. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much. I think I want you to engage with the rest of the questions in the chat box while we continue. And on behalf of everyone here, we thank you so much. What you have given us today isn't just a presentation, it's a frame. You framed our mind and it's a lens through which everything else in this session will make more sense. So we're very grateful, absolutely grateful. And thank you for your time. So if you all think that this keynote today was the peak of today's session, I'm delighted to tell you that we're just warming up because we're going to the crux of the matter right now. And so we're moving into the panel discussion. And this panel proves that Coach right here. So we have 5 panelists today from multiple countries, from multiple sectors, here to have one conversation on this particular topic, our theme for today, on the cross-sector fraud dynamics. So it's tracking money laundering, cyber fraud, and financial manipulation across institutions. So leading us into this discussion is someone who works at the frontier that most people are only beginning to understand. And we know that, as I'm saying there, I know everyone is thinking emerging technologies, the virtual asset. So there's an intersection of blockchain forensics and financial crime. This person is within that realm. So this is not going to be theoretical. It's not going to be theoretical for the person in question at all. And this is where she works every single day. We have Ms. Chioma Oyekelu, who is a blockchain forensics specialist, a certified anti-money laundering specialist, a cryptocurrency investigation, fraud, asset tracing, illicit financial flows, blockchain-based financial crimes. She advises cryptocurrency exchanges, Web3 startups, and virtual asset service providers on AML CFT compliance, and she delivers specialist training to law enforcement and compliance professionals across Africa. She also holds a master's degree in blockchain and digital currencies and is widely regarded as one of Africa's leading voices on digital asset security. I wish some of you would just tell me, oh, we know her, no need for introductions. So here to welcome and to be my great pleasure and full confidence that I hand over the floor to my co-moderator who will take us into the panel. Ms. Chioma, hats off to you and go ahead and take the stage right off.
Thank you so much, Rabia. I don't know if, yeah, okay, yeah, I can see myself. Thank you so much. That was so thoughtful of you. And I want to thank everyone that is here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. It's a pleasure to have you all on this particular call. And thank you to our keynote speaker. And in fact, it was very insightful. So our discussion today is actually titled Cross-Sector Fraud Dynamics, Tracking Money Laundering, Cyber Fraud, and Financial Manipulation across institutions. And like we've heard before now, our panelists are coming from different African jurisdictions as well as different sectors, and they're going to be examining how financial crime is evolving across institutions, the emerging risk organizations must actually prepare for, and the practical strategies that we need to build. Now, before we begin, I know most of us will be wondering, in fact, I love the question that came up around Web3 because that's my niche. But that does not mean that we don't know what we're doing here, or especially for the Drift protocol case that Ezekiel made reference to. It's very interesting to say that that particular case was a very sophisticated social engineering case. So you can imagine people meeting the way you go for an event, you met people at an event, and you built that trust that, oh, these guys are very good to work with. And they went as far as even trying to invest in the platform. And then, you know, that way where you're trying to maybe build things together and you're trying to say, oh, can we join, okay, the tech team, let's be on the call. And then you're letting them know that, oh, we're trying to fix something and it's not working. Can you please just check if you can remove this thing and then it could work? Let's try out something. And then what they were trying to remove was actually a control that was set in place. And Web3 works with smart contracts. So that's a high-level social engineering that happened in that case. So for whatever happens, it means that we have a long way to go in this industry. I also want to explain that in this particular session, we'll be taking it in different groups. But before we go into that, I would love to introduce our panelists, right? So I will start with the first two, and then Rabia will help me to introduce the next three. So I'll start with introducing our first panelist, Mr. Japhet Ghana. So Japhet Ghana, of course, I know him very well. He's Yellow Card's Group Head of Transaction Risk and Financial Crime. He is a seasoned professional with deep expertise in fraud management, transaction monitoring, financial crime prevention and compliance. So he has a proven record of building and executing effective financial crime prevention strategies across global fintech and banking operations. So he plays a key role in safeguarding Yellow Card's ecosystem across 34 markets. That's interesting. And then you could want to know how he began his career at Guaranty Trust Holding Company, one of Africa's largest banking groups with an international footprint. He gained extensive experience investigating complex cross-border financial crimes, and then he joined Kuda. I think that was even where I met him. And then at Kuda, he developed and implemented the bank's enterprise-wide fraud prevention strategy, introduced advanced monitoring systems, and built a scalable fraud framework that strengthened Kuda's overall operations. And then before joining Yellow Card, he served as fraud manager at Fairmoney, which is also a global fintech offering digital banking. So you could see the lot of experience. And currently he holds an MBA from Ahmadu Bello University, a BSc in Business Administration, a certified fraud examiner, certified the currency investigator, certified financial crime specialist. So let me calm down. Chainalysis Reactor certified, microfinance certified banker, and a member of the Chartered Institute of Loan and Risk Management. He is also an active member of ACFP, ACFCS, ISACA, and the Chartered Institute of Bankers. Japhet, you're warmly welcome to this panel. I don't know if he's on the call to just probably say hello, and then I introduce the next panelist. We just want to be sure we have all our panelists on ground. Japhet, can you just say hello? We want to know you are ready.
Thank you. I'm here. Thank you for the introduction.
All right. Thank you. So sit down and just take a chill pill and relax. We'll come back to you. So our next panelist is Olua. Please, can the technicals help me here? Thank you so much. Oluwasegun Ojumola. All right. Oluwasegun is a seasoned fraud, risk, and financial crime professional with extensive expertise in fraud prevention, cybercrime investigation, digital forensics, governance, risk, and compliance, and business resilience within the financial service industry. A certified fraud examiner and certified financial crime specialist. He's committed to designing proactive strategies that strengthen organizational resilience, safeguard customers, and combat emerging financial crime threats in an increasingly digital economy. Currently, he's leading the fraud and investigation function at Piggytech, where he develops fraud prevention frameworks, oversees complex investigations, and drives cross-functional, but this cross-functional is very important, initiatives to identify, mitigate, and respond to evolving fraud risk. His role focuses on strengthening internal controls, improving fraud detection capabilities, and enhancing the organization's overall fraud risk management posture. And then, just not to take much time, he's passionate about innovation and continuous learning. Oluwasegun actively promotes best practices in fraud prevention and financial crime compliance. Outside of work, he enjoys traveling. In fact, it looks like you tell us how many countries we've gone to. And watching insightful documentaries that broaden his knowledge and perspective on global issues. Hello, Oluwasegun. You're welcome to the panel. Please just say hello to us so we know you are right there with us.
Good morning, good morning, everyone. Please confirm you can hear me.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much. So please sit down and relax. We'll get back to you. So I'll hand over to Rabia to please introduce the rest of the panelists.
Thank you so much, Chioma. What a way to open the panel. I think you've energized the session right now with all of your energy. At a point, you have to tell yourself, let me calm down. It's fine. Keep going. We need that energy. So now I have the privilege of introducing the next 3 members of our panel. And before I do, I want to say something about this panel because they represent geographically different parts of the world. We have East Africa, West Africa, and Southern Africa. And we have some of them from banking sector, the government investigation, and internal audit and governance. This is a room that has spanned continent and is spanning the discipline. So one of the first panelists I will introduce, who is the third panelist for today, is Mr. Arthur W. Omuse. Okay, it's displaying, right? So Mr. Arthur, I'd like to say, as we say in Swahili, Karibu, welcome. And this is how I know we say it in Kenya, in the spirit of welcoming you to this discussion. Mr. Arthur is a seasoned senior investigator and a security expert based in Nairobi, Kenya, where he serves with Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the EACC, under the government of Kenya. Over his distinguished career, Mr. Arthur has led numerous high-profile investigations into bribery, economic crimes, corruption, and financial misconduct and investigations that have all contributed to the successful prosecutions, asset recovery, and the disruption of organized financial crime networks across multiple regions. He has also spearheaded strategic capacity building initiatives, delivering trainings on ethics, compliance, financial crime prevention, and emerging technologies. Because he understands that fighting financial crime is not just about investigation, it is also about institutional resilience. Mr. Arthur also holds a Master of Arts. He's pursuing his MSc in criminology and carries a formidable set of professional credentials, such as the Certified Fraud Examiner, the TRM Certified Crypto Investigator, the TRM Certified Crypto Compliance Specialist, the Crystal Intelligence Cryptocurrency Certifications, and certification in asset recovery, money laundering prevention, financial crime prevention, and he's also, in other words, exactly the person you want to be tracking financial crime in this digital age and these emerging times. Please welcome Mr. Arthur. Can you please say hi to everyone, Mr. Arthur?
Hi. Thank you very much, and asante sana kwa Kiswahili tunasema hivyo.
You're welcome. Thank you. So for my next panelist, we have Mr. Ransford Nana Addo. I'm so proud to say this is my friend. I met Mr. Ransford for the first time ever last year during one of the cohorts when I was doing my certified fraud examining classes, and I met him for the first time. So Mr. Ransford Akwaba, like we say in Ghana, we warmly welcome you here. Mr. Ransford is a distinguished financial crime professional with over 2 decades of experience in fraud risk management, criminal investigations, and corporate security intelligence. He currently serves as head of financial crime management at Fidelity Bank in Ghana, where he leads the institution's entire anti-financial crime strategy and risk management framework. Before that, he held senior leadership roles at EcoBank Group, Vodafone Ghana, bringing both the banking and telecommunication sectors into his frame of reference. And beyond the banking floor, Ransford is an adjunct lecturer and senior fellow at the African Academy for Counter-Fraud and Anti-Corruption Studies in Nigeria. He facilitates specialist programs across leading institutions on the continent, and he's a sought-after conference speaker and media commentator on fraud, financial crime, and corporate ethics. He also holds an executive MBA from NUST, I think it's KNUST, and is a certified fraud examiner and a professional certified investigator and a certified financial crime specialist and a certified compliance officer. I think by the end of the day, everybody in this session needs to get a certification, because the group of experts here can actually share their certifications with you. Like you can claim it as well. So what I particularly appreciate about Mr. Ransford is that he brings something rare, which is a combination of operational depth from the trenches of financial crime management and the academic rigor of someone who actually teaches it as well. So we're lucky to have him here aboard and alongside other experts as well. Please welcome Mr. Ransford Nana Addo Jr. Mr. Ransford, say hello to everyone in the audience.
Hi, everyone, and good morning or afternoon, depending on where you find yourself. It's good to see these faces again, especially Rabia. Good to see you.
Yes, likewise, a pleasure having you on board.
Thanks for having.
Thank you. So, my next panelist is Mr. Derek Ngoza, all the way from Zambia. Mr. Derek, can we see the brief bio? Yes, it's here, it's displaying. So Mr. Derek is the founder of the Internal Auditors Mentorship Hub, and he's a seasoned internal audit risk and governance compliance professional with over 13 years of experience across the public and private sector. He's an alumnus of Copperbelt University and holds an MSc in accountancy from the University of London. He's also a certified internal auditor, a chartered accountant, a certified risk management assurance professional, a certified information system auditor, and a certified fraud examiner. Derek has chief audit executive experience across manufacturing, power generation and distribution, and mining, and also financial services, leading internal audit, enterprise risk management, and governance functions. Mr. Derek also currently serves as head of internal audit at the Vision Fund Zambia, providing strategic leadership in risk assurance, compliance, and corporate governance. He is also a board audit and risk committee member at Teveta. He is a member of the ACCA Zambia Members Network Panel and a technical committee chairperson. Mr. Derek also serves as a board director and standards and ethics chairperson at the Institute of Internal Auditors Zambia. In addition, he is also a non-executive director at Clover Insurance Brokers. Additionally, and because we have to mention, these people went through a lot to get all the certifications. So if you're tired of listening, you just have to be patient and listen to all of the credentials. He's also a founder of Fakama Advisory Limited and the proprietor of the A2B Risk Framework and the Ingosa Compliance Execution Framework, which are applied in strengthening governance, risk, and compliance execution across organizations. Previously, Derek served as head of internal audit at Dangote Cement Zambia Limited and acting head of audit and risk at the Rural Electrification Authority, where he led enterprise risk framework development, fraud risk assessment, and audit automation initiatives. Mr. Derek, I'd like to say, I don't know the pronunciation, if I'm getting it right in Zambia, is Umwamukelwa. You can correct me if that is wrong. You are welcome here, and we're so happy to have you on board. I know you're going to bring what I would describe as the governance backbone and the institutional architecture through which financial crime will either thrive or is stopped at the door. Please, we're welcoming you here on board. Say hi to everyone on the floor.
Thank you so much, Rabia, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Chioma, the floor is all yours now.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to encourage us. I'm a teacher, and I like to encourage all participants to always try to jot down, take notes, take points, right? You can't be in this session without taking up something away from this particular segment. You've seen the panelists, like everybody's ready. So please take advantage of this moment. All right, so without wasting much time, I would like us to know that these days, fraud has gone beyond, or fraudsters have leveled up. Let me use that word. So we don't see local fraud again. It's now international. And if you've read the UN Office on Drugs, that's UNODC reports this July, it was very clear that transnational scam syndicates have evolved into interconnected criminal enterprises with specialized departments. So imagine a scenario where you could have a big multinational business, and then within that business, you are having some people specialized in handling fraud. Some people specialize in handling money laundering, some people in human trafficking, some people in data harvesting, underground banking, name them. So it's no longer, oh, they are trying to just do things in silos. They are already connecting together. And that is why we as financial crime fighters should also connect together. So we are no longer seeing fraud just being designated to one country. We know what we call regulatory arbitrage, where even the fraudsters will look at the jurisdictions that have lesser controls and probably regulatory oversight and try to go over there. So today we've tried to make sure that we've segmented this panel section in 4 ways, like in 4 segments, so that we can take us from the low to the highest level. So we'll start with the first one, where we would understand the new financial crimes landscape. We examine how this financial crime is actually evolving. We look at the key trends that we are already seeing in our different maybe workplaces and experience. And then we'll move to the next chapter, where we'll now look at following the money. For us that are investigators, you know what it means to follow the money. It's quite, let's say, it's the fact that investigation is reactive. So that crime has to happen before you'll be able to follow the money and trace it. So we'll look at it anyways. And then the third chapter that we'll look at is how now we can strengthen institutional defenses. How, as our institutions, we need to now put up our controls in place, our internal audits and all of that, the organizational culture and all of that. And then in the last chapter, we'll build a collective response where we'll look beyond the individual institutions to discuss intelligence sharing, regulatory cooperation, law enforcement, and the collaborative actions that we need to stay ahead of increasingly sophisticated financial crime networks. So if you're ready, I want to have your emojis. You can use your favorite emoji and react, because at this point, we're about to start. And to our panelists, please feel free to talk at length, but please let's also be mindful of time so that we can all leave here, because if we leave us here, I know that we might not really leave, but let's also try and be time conscious. So I want to start with the first segment, which is understanding the new financial crime landscape. And this question will go to everyone. So we'll start with Japhet, all right, with the first question. So Japhet, are you ready? So the question goes to everybody. Financial crime has actually become increasingly borderless. We've established that fact, and sophisticated. But we want you to tell us what the current trends you are seeing. We don't want to talk about the one you are seeing, all right? What are the most pressing financial crime trends that you're seeing and currently shaping the Africa's risk landscape? So Japhet, if you're ready, please 90 seconds so that we can move to the next panelist. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just to confirm, can you hear me?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. So when we talk about financial crime trends today, for me, the biggest shift I'm seeing is that criminals are no longer operating within one institution or within one country, or using just one payment rail. They operate across different rails, across different financial ecosystems, across different countries. We are seeing fraud evolve from before now isolated incidents into a more coordinated criminal network. We can also see this that happened within the CBEX scam that happened sometime last year. It wasn't a Nigerian scam, a Nigerian Ponzi. It's something that affected, a number of East African countries, so you see that it's a coordinated team. So a fraudster may on board with a fintech using a synthetic identity, they receive funds through mobile money or through their bank accounts. They move those same funds that they've received into bank accounts. They convert them into cryptocurrency and then also cash them out from another jurisdiction, right? Within minutes, we're talking about moving millions within minutes. And there are different participants in this type of schemes, right? And every participant in that chain only sees a small part of the picture. From the mobile money end, they are seeing it as, oh, our customers have lost fund. From the banking end, on the on-chain end, but there's a network that has led to the movement of funds across the different, the different channels. And it's not just seeing the small picture. We need to see the whole criminal journey, right? And then the second trend for me would be the weaponization of technology. I don't know, can you see me?
I can't see you, but I could
Okay.
hear
How
you.
about how about now?
No.
Let me see what's going on.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. So the second trend is the weaponization of technology. Criminals are increasingly using AI, similar to what we've mentioned at the beginning. They are using AI to generate convincing, phishing campaigns, convincing synthetic ID cards, convincing, emails, so many things, even voice cloning, video cloning, anything to just socially engineer clients. And this is part of the trends we are seeing now, and it has also made stopping this quite difficult, right? And then one more trend I'll see that I'll note that we're also seeing now, which is very much increasing, is the use of mule accounts, mule networks, using same social engineering techniques to deceive people. And then the rate of, corruption and poverty out there has made things, easy to get moves out there, to just deceive them into using their accounts, into moving funds. All of these are the trends we are seeing that is making, financial crime risks be on the increase, and all of these fraud trends being on the increase at this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm beginning to say it's okay. But then I was very interested in knowing that people are using, like, news actually taking leverage of cryptocurrency exchanges. Very interesting. Okay, let's hear from Oluwasegun. Please, let's hear the trends that you're actually experiencing now.
Hi, Chama. Good morning, and thank you again for having me. So I told myself that irrespective of the question you asked, that the first thing I'm going to be saying is to repeat something that Madam Adesola said when she was speaking. And what she said was, we must use technology to fight technology. I thought that was, very profound. It's something that I wanted to reemphasize, and I hope that somehow we hold on to that, and that makes some kind of meaning to the work that we do. I think that my friend Jafet has, spoken a lot to, the question you asked around, some of the trends that are shaping, Africa's, risk landscape as it were today. I'd like to just, draw from a perspective that NIPS shared. I think that, they drew our attention to the fact that insider abuse, as it were today, is still one of the singular, biggest threats, that organizations are facing today. There have been multiple instances of, hacks, that have occurred within financial institutions. This is July, largely even within H1, right? we can't begin to mention names or begin to give numbers, but there've been multiple instances of of those cases. And I'd like to again look back again to I think something that happened maybe sometimes last year, of a financial institution where there was some form of collusion within their payments team, that meant that they abused the system that they had and exposed, I think, the institution to somewhere around in excess of about 40 billion. Right. So while we're looking into the future and some of these new trends that we're seeing, it's also important that we're looking at, some of these what I would like to call legacy issues that have continued to be pressing even as we go into the future. One of the things that Japhet also spoke about was around the emergence of AI and what all of those also comes with. AI is beneficial to us today in many ways. Again, Madam Adeshola said something, and I think in response to the question someone asked as to how to use AI to fight fraud, and she also spoke to how she's used, ML, maybe more than a decade ago. Right. Today, that is becoming even more pronounced, but even at it, that has also exposed us to, certain kind of risks. The issues around deep fakes are becoming even more pronounced now, right? One of the things I think that Japhet also spoke about was the issue around mule accounts, and I think that that's such an important, concept to pay attention to. More so because a jurisdiction like ours in Nigeria, for instance, I don't have the real data, but I think that we're seeing more pay with bank transfer related transactions now than we're seeing with cards, right? So that means that because there's a shift on that corridor, we're also seeing like an increase, on in the kind of threats that we're seeing in that regard. People are able to open multiple accounts with ease again because we're also selling ease alongside the products that we're selling. And it also means that people are taking advantage of those corridors. Nobody from NIPS is on this panel, but if you speak to them, they'll tell you about the issues with people owning multiple BVNs and things like that. Again, that speaks to the ability to be able to do some of these things, BVN theft, leveraging those things again to create mule accounts, abuse platforms generally. So I'll say generally, I think that the kind of threats that we faced in the last decade, was something that was coming from outside the walls. What we're seeing now is something that is coming from within. Thank you, Choma.
Quite interesting. This time we're seeing things coming from within. Interesting. Okay, so let's take it a little bit higher. I think we've heard from, like, let's say the fintech, the VAS, the crypto exchanges. Let's look at from the law enforcement perspective, and allow me to welcome Mr. Arthur. What do you think, from your own perspective, what are the trends you're seeing, maybe all the way from Kenya and probably beyond? Can you let us into some of them?
Thank you, Choma. First and foremost, I want us to agree that we have a very huge shift of financial crime in Africa. And you realize financial crime is no longer constrained by things like geography, institutional setup, or traditional financial systems the way they are. Organized criminal networks now exploit things like digital payments, virtual assets, and cross-border infrastructure at a speed that often outpaces institutional response. And that one poses a great risk to how we are prepared to fight these financial crimes. And from a law enforcement perspective, I look at these trends from a three approach that they tend to converge. Number one, financial crimes is increasingly networked and across border. And the same, for instance, East Africa and beyond, you find they are using SIM cards registered in one country. They can commit a crime and go and commit a crime in a different country, of course, within a certain region that you have the same network. Then you also have bank accounts, people using the same to also commit these frauds. And beyond that, we have those using shell companies elsewhere and virtual assets, which are accessible from anywhere. And I think Adesola alluded to this earlier on. And that kind of fragmentation is deliberate in the sense that it separates the fraud, the movement of proceeds and cash out points, what we call in virtual asset off-ramp, across several jurisdictions. The second one, you look at the cyber-enabled fraud, which is operating currently at industrial scale. Social engineering is being strengthened by automation, synthetic identities, deepfake audios, and more convincing phishing. You remember Madam Adesola talked about movement of money done within minutes with a voice of somebody, maybe claiming to be a CEO. And that one is taking this field of financial crime at a higher level. And for instance, in 2023, we had a highest number of cyber crimes taking place. And Kenya Cyber Incident Response Team detected about 842 million cyber threat events during that period. And those figures describe different measures, but when they put together, they show how the pressure facing both consumers and institutions rising. The third one, you look at virtual assets. They have expanded the laundering toolkit, of course, with Bitcoin, stablecoins, peer-to-peer markets, cross-chain swaps, and self-hosted wallets, which move value quickly across the borders. And the technology, of course, is not criminal, but criminals are exploiting it to their advantage because of uneven regulation, weak tracing capability, and slow international cooperation. Weak tracing capability, of course, we're talking about your investigators well trained to be able to match with the coming technology. You realize that the speed of crime is increasingly faster than the speed of compliance today. So when you compare the two, where do you invest most of your time, your resources, and so on? How do we respond to this? We have to embed technology, like for virtual assets, embed blockchain analytics and digital forensics capability in the mainstream investigation workflows than just treating it as a specialist add-on to your, maybe to your system or your teams. You also have to create a faster intelligence bridge among financial intelligence units. That you'll agree with me that sometimes it's a huge problem within our structures, both in private and government sectors. Law enforcement agencies, banks, mobile providers, fintech, and virtual assets providers need to come together and see how do we bridge this gap. And further, I look at it from a point of capacity building. We need to train our investigators, prosecutors, and judicial officers together so that they're able to understand how do we bring this nexus together so that we have digital evidence moving from identification to be able to be admissible in courtroom. And this one will help us fight this crime in a manner that we all agree that we are moving towards a direction that we agree. And lastly, maybe let me close with saying that Africa, this landscape is not changing because criminals are invisible. No. It is changing because they adapt faster than institutions. Our institutions go very slowly, and the rate of adoption is very low. And therefore, our response must become equally faster and connected and should be technology enabled. Thank you.
Asante. So, of course, 2 weeks ago, I was in Kenya with my team where we trained a bank in Kenya. So, and it's very interesting to hear things around mobile money, M-Pesa, and things you've also mentioned. And also very interesting, I was thinking you mentioned it, that Kenya has gazetted the Virtual Asset Service Provider Regulation. Yesterday evening, that was the news all over. And it means that we are moving towards the green light, and
yes, I was to respond to that. Maybe as we continue.
So no problem. I'm excited to even share it before you. Don't worry. Thank you. Don't mention.
Thank you.
All right. So let's hear and know what's happening in Ghana. Of course, we have Ransford Nana. Please, are you here to let us know the trends that you've seen around over there in Ghana and beyond, actually, for West Africa? Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you very much. And it's quite refreshing listening to what is happening across the East African region. Always insightful to hear from Nigeria. Nigeria is always a senior brother to Ghana because whatever we see in Ghana, Nigerians would have seen it already. But quickly, let me take it from the points that my brother Japheth left off. I think that in Ghana, we've seen a surge in digital solutions. And the criminals, just as we are predicting for ourselves, are also following the money. So today, transactions that involve checks and filling forms and all that have been regulated to the background. And we have a lot of fintech springing up. We have a lot of banking products springing up. And the criminals are actually taking advantage of the same level of convenience that we seek to give to the customers in Ghana. But what is amazing is how institutions within Africa who have been set up to make profits. And so when it favors them, it is very difficult for them to join the fight because, hey, if somebody deposits $2 million into an account, the compliance head is being chased by the business team in retail and corporate banking to say, hey, that is revenue coming in. So the conversation around the fight brings a very important point that we have been discussing in the past, the criminogenic nature of organizations whose core job is there to make profits and not to fight crime. And it's something that we need to understand. Jibola says something, and I think that says something. I think that the human risk or the people risk to me is the biggest of all, because there are people who are seated in these organizations where the monies are being moved into. They are seeing 18-year-olds. They are seeing people who did not even have $5 in their account for 1 year, all of a sudden receiving monies across multiple channels, and everybody is watching. So if the money leaves your end, you would actually feel the heat because you are the victim. But when another institution, either a telecom network, money service provider, is the one who has received the money, the protocols involved even discussing how to even help to investigate and possibly recover is so unattractive. So digital banking and digital channels within Ghana, just as Africa is also growing, has given a lot of options to cyber criminals and financial criminals to move money around. I remember very well last year, we had more than 4 cases of people arriving in Ghana with more than 150 cards. The minimum we had was 150 cards, credit cards. And the EOCO, which is the EFCC version of Ghana, Economic and Organized Crime Office of Ghana, arrested some of these guys at the airport and, interviewed them. And interestingly enough, the account holders confirmed that it's our cards. We gave it to the guy to do transactions for us. So it is very, very common nowadays for you to see the digital channels such as mobile money, OPay, the cards springing around, and it's very, very difficult for you to trace because people are using prepaid cards and they have multiple of these channels. So when they commit crime and they're actually keeping them in wallets, it is very difficult for you to, I don't think there's any law anywhere that bars you to say that you can have only one SIM card. If you have a SIM card in Ghana, it means that you can connect to the mobile money, you can increase your limit. So people walk around just with SIM cards and they are carrying huge sums of money. So if you are searching people's bags at the airport looking for money in sacks and all that, so you won't see it again. They are carrying them on SIM cards, they are carrying them on crypto wallets, and they are moving around with the speed of light. Now, what is worrying is the speed at which wallets are credited and the sophistication with which every day APIs are being built between organizations, banks and fintechs and telecom companies and aggregators But when it comes to the fight, we are about 4 steps behind, if I am not even being charitable, where even the security officers or the investigative bodies do not understand these things at all. So you go to them, and the people who are supposed to help in fighting these things do not even understand or appreciate it. One key thing we are seeing is money moves, taking shape in Ghana. And I think that across Africa, because of the poverty levels, people easily give out their identities to open account or to register wallets on behalf of other people. So you may be thinking that you are chasing one person. In a case we were investigating, we had more than 150 foreigners who had actually made Ghanaians open accounts for them and were moving monies with these accounts. So you see people's IDs using open accounts and they have no idea what those accounts are meant for. So money moves have become a very, very opportunistic aspect of the financial crime that we are seeing. And like I said, because of the poverty levels and because of ignorance and because of we are now playing catch up. Security agencies are playing catch up. The silo effect where, recently monies were moved to some African countries. And when we called the institutions, what they said was that bring us a court order. And the key question I asked, which will come to a point that I disagree with this, so like the last slide she showed, we said that financial crimes have become borderless. Therefore, the fight is also becoming borderless. I think that the borders are very visible when we are fighting crime. They told us to bring court orders. How do I sit in Ghana and get a court order in Kenya? Which court is going to issue that? So you are operating a business, you've lost money, and monies have been moved to different countries. The monies are supposed to be blocked so that they are reversed for recoveries and all that. You are supposed to bring court orders. The different laws in different countries are fighting against us. But money doesn't know border. When the money moves, then the borders begin to show. Data Protection Act will not allow anybody to give you details of what is on an account. So we have a real problem at hand. And I hope that we'll be able to profess some solutions as Africans together by the time we finish with this seminar.
And I hope so too, because you really hit the hammer on the nail, right? Because when it comes to collaboration, we're still very far. I don't want to start explaining the things we see in the crypto space when we do investigations and you're trying to subpoena probably rights or other jurisdictions. They're telling you to bring MLAT. Of course, you know that's a categorical way of saying we don't want to attend to you. Anyways, that's by the way. We could come to that later. But nice one. Thank you for letting us know what's happening in Ghana. Interesting to see what people are doing with even SIM cards and all. And it's also interesting to know because we also have a branch in Ghana. So I know about the Ghana card thing. You don't have to take pictures or photocopy of Ghana cards at the moment. And that's like a control that the government is trying to put in place to curb all this. So let's quickly listen to what's happening from at Zambia from Derek. Derek, are you here? Briefly, can you let us know what's happening? What are the trends you're seeing in Zambia and beyond?
Okay. Thank you so much, Shoma. I'll be as brief as possible. Okay. So from my perspective, one of the most pressing trends that is the increasing sophistication of the control circumvention. Today, Choma, fraudsters are not just exploiting weaknesses in systems. They are identifying and taking advantage of gaps in the governance frameworks and oversight. We're also seeing risks emerge from fragmented oversight across institutions, particularly where there are extensive third-party relationships and decentralized operations. These environments can create blind spots that are more difficult to detect and monitor. From this, this underscores the need for organizations to adopt a more integrated, risk-based audit approach, one that goes beyond just evaluating whether controls are operating effectively and instead anticipates how evolving financial crime patterns may circumvent traditional assurance mechanisms. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much for being very brief and also letting us know that we are not just having maybe compliance operational issues, we're also having governance issues. And these fraudsters are actually now taking advantage of that. So while we move to the next chapter where we look at following the money, where criminals exploit the system, I would also like to plead with our panelists to be as brief as possible so that we can also leave there, because if we leave us, we have a lot of things to share, but please let's just try and be brief as possible so that we can also exhaust the conversation points that we have already. Okay, so I'll come back to you, Japhet. Okay, I don't know if you're ready for me, but then the next question, what are the biggest blind spots in transaction monitoring? When I was reading your profile, I was seeing a lot of build transaction monitoring controls, transaction monitoring. Please let us know, what are the biggest blind spots in transaction monitoring across African financial systems today? And please be brief as possible. Thank you.
I'll try to be. The honest answer to this is our blind spots in Africa are more structural than they are technical, right? And there's a big disconnect between, the informal financial networks and the regulated system, right? There's still a lot of things being done with cash, a lot of transactions happening between agents, a lot of transactions happening between, informal saving groups and the likes. And there's a gap there. If you can't see the money, you can't see it within a regulated system. There's a huge gap there. So, but I'll just move to other areas. And one of the other biggest risks, we can see here is that there's a fragmented visibility when it comes to, monitoring within African financial systems today, right? And every institution has become, better at monitoring its own transactions, but criminals don't operate within institutional boundaries, right? They don't look at the boundaries of, oh, we're just coming to attack, this bank alone or this institution alone. They look at things across border. But you find that institutions, when they are monitoring, they're only looking at within their system. Nobody's looking at, okay, intelligence from outside, what's happening, outside, what's happening within the telcos, what's happening within other institutions, what risks have they seen, what are the recent fraud trends that have happened, what are the learnings we can take from it, or in fact, what's happening within mobile money operators, what are the fraud trends happening there, or even within the crypto areas or PSPs. They just assume, oh, if I'm working within the bank, then my rules should be fine-tuned to fit what we would see within banking. Or if I'm a PSP, my rules should be fitted for, PSPs. But that's wrong, because if you're not looking at the whole ecosystem, you're already missing out on some of the risks that, can even crystallize at your end or can start at your end, right? And then one other issue is, the over-reliance on rule-based systems, rule-based monitoring. Many systems still focus on, simple threshold, transactions above $1,000, 1 million naira, 10 million naira, 10,000 CDs, things like that. That's rule based, and the risks today are beyond rule based. The risks today are, beyond the traditional legacy transaction monitoring systems. The risks today, you need to have a more coordinated approach. You're looking at behavioral intelligence, looking at pattern recognition, having AI capabilities to be able to flag AI type of risks, deep fake type of risks. You're looking at real time, scoring that is looking at activities from onboarding, activities from the, devices, activities from, users' location, everything all encompassing. So there's a lot of gap in that area, and I think, fixing some of these blind spots would help, just make institutions much stronger. This is me just summarizing. Thank you.
Thank you, but maybe let's question, I will say in 1 minute so that we can be faster. All right. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I agree with the rule-based transaction monitoring. I think a lot of persons are trying to maybe variate it, right? Okay, so let's quickly listen to Oluwasegun speaking about trade finance, corporate transactions. What emerging fraud patterns are you seeing within trade finance and corporate transactions in Africa? In 1 minute, please, please, please. I am begging so that we can leave and we can finish what we're talking about. All right, Oluwasegun.
Thank you, Choma. So I think that this is an exciting question, and I think that is something that I also like to hear the perspective of my colleagues from these other jurisdictions on, in the sense of how they are seeing this. One of the things that stood out for me in the submissions we've seen so far, across the different panelists and in the things I've said, is in how much of a gap exists today, in the sense of how we're collaborating, especially in how we're fighting fraud, right? I think that Ransford said something around, the silo effect, how a lot of the things we're still doing, we're doing focusing largely on how it concerns us as individual organizations without a broader view of how what we're doing can contribute to the general fight against fraud, right? We're not going to make a lot of progress if that is how we continue to approach the fight against fraud today. And again, to the specific question you asked, I think that if there's something that is a reality today, is also the concern around exploitation of weak verification systems, right, across cross-border transactions, manipulation of invoices and things like that. Again, some of the submissions that have also been made today have also been submissions around, the abuse, of artificial intelligence today, how easy it is to create, malicious documents, that are not what they are supposed to be. The institutions on the receiving end, if they don't have systems that are able to verify these things to be what they are, if they don't have systems, or they don't have processes in place for what I would like to call real due diligence, we'll continue to see abuses like this. So I'll say that I think that's a gap that I think exists on that corridor today.
Thank you so much. Okay, so at this point, I don't know if Rabia, I hope you've not slept off on me.
No, I'm here. I'm here. I'm ready to jump in. So, Mr. Arthur, the next question goes to you. And that is mostly because you sit inside a government investigative body, which means you see the gap between what policy says and what investigators actually encounter on the ground. So our question for you is that what policy reforms are needed to strengthen financial crime enforcement across Africa? Please, you have a minute to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabia.
Yeah.
First is that crime has evolved very fast. And that, of course, that one doesn't match the same pace with the legislation. Our laws were designed in a way that they respond mostly to paper records. And you find that. And mostly domestic banks struggle so much when the cases have gone beyond what we imagined some years back. And of course, the laws we have today are finding it difficult to respond to things like encrypted communication, foreign platform, or stable coins. And how do we navigate this across different jurisdictions? And I see a problem from this perspective. It's not always that we don't have laws. The problem is the gap that is between legislation, operational regulation, and enforcement capacity. That's what I see as the problem. And for instance, Kenya just enacted a Virtual Asset Providers Act, which took effect last year, 2025. This one created a formal regulatory under that brought in Central Bank and Capital Markets Authority. Rwanda, on the other side, gazetted its law last year. This year, while some details within the regulations are still being developed, it is important that certain steps have to be put in place. But it becomes difficult when legislation becomes a stumbling block, and therefore becomes difficult to be able to operate within environments that does not have a regulation. And therefore, I look at this from 3 points, maybe very fast. The most urgent thing is countries need to have a clear and more harmonized definitions for some level of laws. For instance, the virtual assets, the beneficial ownership proceeds of crime, and cyber-enabled crimes, where we need to have them, countries be able to work together within those laws. Secondly, our legal systems need also explicit standards for collecting or rather authenticating and presenting certain crimes. For instance, blockchain records, device data, metadata, and encrypted communication. That's where we have another huge problem. And thirdly, enforcement agencies need also protected budgets for specialist personnel, analytical tools, and cross-border casework. I say this because policy reforms without operational capacity in most cases are just performative, in the sense that a law that cannot be enforced may create appearance of control without changing criminal behavior. And I looked at this and said, 3 priority areas probably would address this thing very fast. We need to modernize our legislations to cover virtual assets and digital identity platforms, enabled fraud, and other cyber-enabled predicate offenses.
Okay.
Also, we need to develop a court-tested digital evidence protocols and train investigators, prosecution, and judges as one ecosystem. This one has just happened recently. The last 5 days has had a good number of prosecutors, investigators, and other law enforcement within the region converging here in Nairobi to be able to see and set pace for virtual assets. And with this, we'll be able to have responses across the region in the near future. Lastly, we need to link every major reform to an implementation plan, supervisory capability, technology budget, and measurable enforcement outcomes, so that we're able to see these things working together and we get responses within that ecosystem. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Arthur. We'll get back to you again with a further question. And now I'm moving on to Mr. Ransford. I hope you're still on the call. And this is mostly because you're on this other side of the equation where Mr. Arthur is, because you're inside the banking system and you see the layering techniques that land on your desks in real time. So we would like to know from you, in the African banking ecosystem, how can institutions better detect cross-border layering techniques used in money laundering schemes? And this is especially important to me as well as a financial intelligence analyst. Over to you, Mr. Ransford. Please, you have a minute to respond.
Thank you very much, Rabia. So I think that one of the key mistakes that some of my colleagues have been making is to focus on transactions instead of patterns. If you focus on transactions, you're going to get it wrong. I'll give you an example. If anybody is working with an institution, he gets to know the limits that will trigger some monitoring or some suspicion. How do I beat those limits? I am going to move some through internet banking. I am going to move some through cards. I am going to move some through mobile money. I am going to move some through WhatsApp banking. I am going to move some through checks, and I'm going to scatter it around. The more they scatter it around and even give it a cross-border twist, then crime fighters become very lazy because most of the systems that we have are rule-based. So the first thing is that for us to deal with this, you need to take your eyes off individual transactions and look at the patterns. Midnight, cross-border, volumes that are a little bit below a threshold that would have normally triggered your suspicion. And you can't do this with a human eye. You can't do this with the traditional Excel sheets that we have always been used to, using. We need to deploy machine learning, artificial intelligence systems that will come back and say that, what did we learn last year? We noticed that there were transactions through more than 7 countries within an hour. Feed it back into the system and say that tomorrow, if you see something that is similar, draw our attention to it. You cannot keep your eyes on individual transactions and succeed in this game. You need to follow the pattern, and you need to do that with the use of AI and machine learning.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And because I'm a strategic analyst, I'm an opportunity to see the patterns instead of just transactions. This is what I do every day. And that way you're beginning to see trends and typologies. And from those typologies, they're better able to inform even the indicators that goes into the intelligence report as well. So that's actually valuable and profound. Mr. Derek Ngosa, I'm moving over to you. And my question for you would be that in today's increasingly interconnected financial ecosystem, internal audit functions are expected to move beyond traditional assurance roles. So from your perspective, how can internal audit evolve into a proactive, intelligence-driven function that identifies and mitigates cross-sector fraud risk before they crystallize? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rabia, for that question. Kindly confirm if I'm audible.
Yes, you are. You are audible. Thank you.
Okay. So from me, from the internal audit side, I believe the internal audit needs to evolve from being a traditional assurance function into one that is forward-looking and risk intelligent. That means making greater use of things like data analytics, continuous auditing techniques, and integrated risk frameworks to identify emerging risks before they become significant issues. This also means ensuring our audit plans keep pace with the evolving fraud typologies, whether it be cyber-enabled financial manipulation or trade-based money laundering. Finally, internal audit cannot operate in isolation. By embedding predictive analytics into our work and collaborating closely with our compliance and risk management colleagues, we can provide early warning signals and actionable insights that help management address risks before they crystallize, rather than simply reporting on them after the fact. That is my contribution, Rabia.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the valuable input. Ms. Sharma, please go ahead and continue with the module.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I think we're progressing. We're almost there, and our panelists are doing so well. Kudos to you all. Thank you so much. So now we're going to look at the technology. I love the fact that we've looked at the fact that it shouldn't be rule-based, but I'm super excited to listen to this. Japhet, I'm coming to you now. Let's be practical now, right? I know a lot of us have talked about how to use AI, improve the transaction monitoring, let it not be rule-based. Now, how do you manage the two sides? Like, how do you do the combo between the TradFi and the crypto? I want it to be practical. Like, are you building internal systems in collaboration with blockchain analytic tools, like let's say KYT from Chainalysis, and then you're doing the TradFi side in silos? Or do you have an internal place where you bring all the things together, maybe in a CM, and you disseminate within the infrastructure? So what do you think is the best way, especially now that we're not just talking about TradFi or crypto? How do you bring the both? And we're still talking about transaction monitoring as well, but then how do you combine the both ends? Japhet, I know you can do justice to this question.
Yeah,
and in 1.5 minutes, let me give you extra half. Thank you.
So I think ultimately, you need to have a system that integrates information on the on-chain side and then information on the TradFi side. There are lots of solutions out there already marrying this information. But if you know that is not easy to do, you can as well work with these tools independently, but making sure that on the TradFi side, you have a tool that is doing everything from onboarding, you're screening users, you're checking the fiat deposits coming in, everything around fiat, fiat deposits coming in, fiat withdrawals going out, the buy and sell. You're making sure all that is being monitored before it moves to the on-chain side, right? And then on the on-chain side as well, anything happening on the on-chain, whether it's coming in, it's going out, there's a swap, you're actively using the blockchain intelligence tools to do all of that monitoring and then paying attention to when it's being converted to the fiat side. But ultimately, you need to have or work on a solution that's whether it's internally or it's outsourced, but something that marries out all of those information integrated into one viewpoint so that you have a thorough 360-degree view of everything. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Japhet. And when you were saying on-chain, off-chain, I was looking around. Does everybody understand this? Okay, let me just help. Off-chain means where you're trying to probably convert your crypto back to fiat. On-chain is where you're trying to convert your fiat back to crypto. So apologies if you're new, but then this is what we do. We can help you, teach you, train you. And it's good to know that I also thought Japhet crypto investigation. So you can also come around. Thank you so much, Japhet. And let's go to Oluwasegun. Now, what are the threats and vulnerabilities you are seeing that affect financial institutions, right? Like, where is it coming from? Are you seeing it more from the technology aspect, maybe cybersecurity flaws, or from the human aspect? So what are the largest threats, and how do you think that this can be controlled? We're trying to round it up. So when you tell us how to control it. 1.5 minutes. Thank you so much, Oluwasegun.
Awesome. Thank you, Chioma. Again, I'll try to work within your time. So I think that, again, this is a point that some of my panelists have sort of alluded to. I think that if there's something that I think, right, that many organizations are overlooking today is what I would like to describe as false assurance, right? Meaning that what you thought was a control that was effective yesterday is effective for catering to what the issues today are, right? We can all agree in this room that fraud is not static, right? It is adaptive. You've asked, Japhet questions around, fraud monitoring in terms of how you're setting up your fraud solution. You've asked about, rules. He's spoken about rule-based solutions and things like that. I think Ransford earlier on also spoke about, paying attention to not just transactions, but behavioral patterns, right? And that will also feed into, my response to the question that you've asked, to then say that, are we going back to testing the controls that we have in place to see that they're effective for the issues that we're seeing today, right? We're seeing new fraud typologies. We're seeing emerging issues. What sort of controls do we have in place to cater for things like that, right? And I think that's such an important that's an important thing to begin to pay attention to, right? So that you don't think that what you had in place, is still effective for catering to where you're going to. And I think that this is a question that organizations must be able to answer, in the sense of how they're paying attention to their to their control environment, to how they are setting up their fraud solution, for instance, to how they are how they are monitoring fraud, right? You need to be sure that you're not holding on to what was true yesterday as the reality for today.
Thank you so much. So let me welcome Rabia back. Rabia, are you ready?
Yes, I'm here. I'm back. And my question will be for Mr. Arthur. Mr. Arthur, are you ready for us?
Yes, Rabia.
Thank you for still staying on the call. Thank you all for your time. We would like to know from you what are some of the key challenges that law enforcement faces in prosecuting cross-border financial crimes in Africa, especially.
Thank you very much, Rabia, for your question. Number one is you all agree with me that crime is borderless, but our prosecution structures are not. And for a fraud that can happen in Nigeria to an account that is in foreign company within a shell company or a stable coin, then goes through a mobile phone and it is cashed out somewhere. As that one all is happening, you've prepared maybe an MLA, which takes time to be received in a different jurisdiction. And that one is what forms the basis of so many challenges that law enforcement face while trying to prosecute cross-border financial crimes within our setup in Africa. And some of the obstacles include jurisdictional fragmentation. Countries apply different evidentiary threshold. Disclosure rules, of course, also apply with limitation periods and definition of criminal conduct, which differs in different jurisdictions. And the evidence that is usable in one court may require completely a different collection process in another country. So jurisdiction form the biggest challenge to most law enforcement challenges. Secondly, there's a delay. Mutual legal assistance remains a very essential process in law enforcement. But traditional processes are, of course, often very slow for assets that can move in seconds. So, currently, we are talking about virtual assets. Are they able to match the structures that we have for probably to be able to seize that asset when it has crossed a border? So we say that by the time records arrive, accounts may be closed, some companies, of course, may be dissolved, and digital assets may be transferred through several additional wallets before this instrument arrives to your desk in a different jurisdiction. So that delay, again, gives the criminal an advantage to be able to utilize whatever he has stolen from one jurisdiction to another. Lastly, but not least, we have a legal and regulatory asymmetry. Criminal networks deliberately, of course, route activities through jurisdictions with very weak supervision or slower cooperation. And when there's low cooperation among different networks, it becomes difficult for prosecutors and law enforcement to achieve whatever they need to achieve within that ecosystem. And lastly, capacity. Looking at it from a multi-country investigation, the least capable or the least response link can determine the outcome of the entire case. How do people respond to your request? Are your probably investigators capacitated very well to be able to handle the processes? So when you look at the link that is weaker, and that one impeds on us achieving our mission, and it becomes a huge challenge to executing, maybe to be able to prosecute a cross-border financial crime. Excuse me. Of course, cross-border financial crime functions are integrated systems. Enforcement must also become equally integrated for us to achieve that level of speed to be able to achieve what we need to. It should not just be a collection of national agencies that communicate only after assets have moved.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so Mr. Arthur, Yes.
Finally,
So to build up on something you've already mentioned about mutual legal assistance, I'm building up because every single time we've had discussions like this, people have mentioned mutual legal assistance as an issue, as a challenge, because it's slow. Because usually you have the evidence there, the intelligence is there, and the trail is also clear. But then the time the formal request takes to go through, to process, and to be responded to, by that time the money has moved and the accounts are closed, or even the train has gone cold as well. So I would like to know from you practically if there is any realistic pathway or a realistic pathway that would fasten the mutual legal assistance. Is there a way to make
we
it
need
faster?
to develop I suggest that we need to develop a regional protocol with the standard digital templates, define responses, timelines, and emergency procedures for rapidly moving assets. So when we come up with a protocol that is working within different jurisdictions, bringing us together, that one will be able to necessitate and make it easier for us to achieve that.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. And my next question will be for Mr. Ransford. Mr. Ransford, we would like to know how financial institutions balance financial inclusion with the risk of increased fraud exposure.
Thank you very much, Rabi.
Yes.
So financial inclusion is no longer a national agenda or a continental agenda. The reality is that you cannot have people who are, if you like, taking off the mainstream and enjoying the kind of facilities that we're enjoying. But the reality is that there are some people who we do not have to give access to some of the channels. If you give them channels that they do not have knowledge on how to use this, criminals will exploit it. I have seen financial institutions who have given access to mobile and internet banking to a blind man.
Wow.
And you ask yourself that who is going to use it? Somebody is going to use this for the blind man to perpetrate crime. And that analogy spreads across. So we need to now segregate our customers, have proper KYC to know who they are, and give them instruments that are going to help them solve their issues. You have old women who cannot read and write, and they are having Visa and MasterCard that can do international transactions. And they are seated at one place. They've never moved outside Yaba or how do you call it? Malata market or Agbogloshi market. They are seated at one place from the market to their house. And they are being given international cards. Criminals would use their children, would use their friends, would use their husbands to utilize these channels for them. So financial inclusion is very good, but for us to balance it, we need to do a lot of education. You see, I hear people say that we need to invest in technology. When technology is very high and advanced and people are ignorant, they will bypass the technology. That is how come social engineering is still a problem today. You do a transaction, send an OTP and say that this is your one-time password, do not share. Another person calls and say that, can you give it to me for me to update your records? And she mentions it. So for us to balance it, one, we need to segregate our customers properly. We need to know who is who and what tools or channels will be useful to them. At the same time, we need to raise the standard of awareness in terms of digital awareness among customers. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Ransford. And my last question for today would be to Mr. Derek Ngosa. And we would like to know, beyond systems and controls and organizations' culture, which often plays a significant role in either enabling or preventing financial crime, right? So from an internal audit standpoint, which is your field, how can institutions effectively assess and influence ethical culture to reduce the risk of fraud across functions and geographies? Thank you. Mr. Derek?
Okay, thank you so much, Rabia, for that question. Okay, so I believe culture is one of the strongest predictors of fraud risk. You can have robust controls on paper, but if the organization culture tolerates unethical behavior, those controls can easily be circumvented. From an internal audit perspective, we assess culture by looking beyond the policies and procedures. We examine, for example, behavioral indicators through employee surveys. We do look at whistleblowing trends, staff interviews, and observations during our audit engagements. We also assess whether there's alignment between what leadership is saying and what employees actually experience. Particular attention is given to the tone at the top, accountability mechanisms, and the incentive structures that have been put in place. I'll give you an example. If performance targets consistently outweigh ethical considerations, that creates an environment where misconduct is more likely to occur. The internal audit's role is not only to identify these cultural risks, but also to recommend practical improvements, such as strengthening ethics training, to enhancing confidential reporting mechanisms, and reinforcing leadership accountability for these issues. Ultimately, when organizations build a culture where integrity is rewarded and ethical conduct is consistently demonstrated by leadership, they significantly reduce their exposure to fraud, and regardless of geography or to business function. Yes, that is my submission.
Okay. Thank you so much. Like, as you can see, while all of you were speaking, I kept taking notes as well, because I'm also here to learn. I'm not just here to moderate. And I think I've been impacted with so much knowledge here, which are practical as well for me as an intelligence analyst. Thank you so much, Mr. Derek. Ms. Chioma, over to you. I believe you're going to take the closing questions.
Yes, like my note is full. I don't know if other people have their notes filled as well. Thank you so much. We've had an engaging session so far. But before we go back to the Q&A section, we'd like to just have the final words from each of the panelists, just in 1 minute. And please, once you say your final words, don't go away, because the question and answer session is coming. So I will start with Japhet. Please, just in 1 minute, your final words, and then you sit back for the questions, but I'm sure they will come.
Okay, thank you. I think the conversation we're having today should just be a reminder to us. We need to, share intelligence. We need to build systems to share intelligence. We need to work more effectively across different institutions, whether you work within banking, you work within fintech, mobile money, NFI, USEC, regulators. Basically, we need to work more together, especially in the area of sharing intelligence, right? With intelligence, a lot can be prevented. A lot can also be discovered, which is going to help in the, ultimate fight against fraud. So that's just my final, contribution. Thank you.
With intelligence, a lot can be prevented, a lot can be discovered. Japhet Ghana, awesome. Thank you so much for that. Oluwasegun, can we hear your final words in 1 minute, please?
Thank you, Chioma. Been exciting being a part of this conversation. Last words from me will be to say that as organizations, it's important that we continue to pay attention to building strong internal controls. The old saying around checker maker is still relevant today more than ever before. As organizations, it's also important that we're paying attention to cultivating a culture that is rooted in integrity and in accountability. In my previous life, I worked in an organization that used the word integrity so much that it became a part of our everyday conversations. Even if you do the you do the slightest thing we say is an integrity issue. What that means is that if that ever goes far, you know what comes with it. And I think that's so important because that fits into how we interact with our environment, how we carry ourselves around work, how we do the things that we do. I think that's very, very important. Technology will continue to change, but these things will continue to guide how we do the work that we do. Culture is so important. And I think that I think Derek, said something around the culture is so important. Someone said, culture will eat, I think process or strategy for breakfast, right? Those would be the last words from me.
Thank you so much. And I think that maker checker is a very important fact to mention, especially for startups, for the Web3 ecosystem, because we don't really have much people or the capacity yet to employ a lot of persons. So you see a single person having end-to-end transaction or activities without somebody else checking in and all that. So thank you for that. That's very interesting. Okay, so let's hear from Arthur. What's your final words that everybody should go home with? We're ready to write down. Thank you. Arthur, are you here?
Yes, Choma, thank you very much. First and foremost, thank you for the opportunity to participate in this panel. It's really a quite enriching panel. And we will agree that whatever has been discussed here goes down very well to each and everybody, probably to implement whatever has been said. And from my perspective, I would say this. As Africa, the fight against financial crime will not stop today. And therefore, we need to make a non-negotiable investment for us to be able to move to the next level where we can say we are doing something. And this, I suggest that we need to have serious investment on capacity building of our investigators, prosecutors, just within the law enforcement ecosystem. And that will help us create a serious intersection between financial intelligence, law enforcement, and technology, because this crime is already digital and borderless. And therefore, the investigator of today, the prosecutor of today, and the regulation of the future must also be capable to match this level. Thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing that point. I would also second it, like investing in education, knowledge building, capacity development is key. I recall those early days when maybe just a regular victim loses funds and they go to the law enforcement. They don't even know what to do. It's getting better, but we'll still have a long way to go, right? So thank you. And also, in case you don't know, we also do training. So please also make sure that you can also reach out as well. So let's hear from Ransford. Nana, what do you have to say? What's the last take home from you? Hi, Ransford.
So thank you.
Okay.
I think that we need to move away from the silo approach and notice that when it comes to the crime against the fight against financial crimes, our biggest strength is our unity. Our biggest strength is our collaboration. Different countries are having different laws. Our borders become tighter when we need to fight crime. And the only people who benefit from these things are the criminals and not the institutions and the law enforcement and all that, not the victims. The tougher borders are becoming a gateway for financial criminals to actually enjoy. It is easier for them to collaborate than for the institutions that are fighting crime to collaborate. The next thing is digital literacy and extension of digital services is the way to go. It is moving faster than the controls and the fight on how to deal with the threats. And therefore, whilst we are actually investing in advancing digital services across the world and across institutions and countries, we should also make the corresponding investment on how to tackle the threats that comes with it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I agree with you, because you could imagine fraudsters maybe exploiting a particular financial ecosystem and using the same typology, the same mechanics to exploit the next financial institution. But we hope that from this training, from this webinar, we would do better, we would collaborate better. Thank you so much for that reminder. And last but not the least, we would like to hear from Derek. What's your final words?
Thank you so much, Choma. So for my final word, if I'm to highlight one strategic priority, it would be basically strengthening independent assurance functions. As financial crime becomes more and more sophisticated, institutions need assurance functions that are agile, forward-looking, and closely aligned with the emerging risks. A key part of that is embedding continuous auditing and a truly risk-based approach across the organization, rather than relying on periodic reviews. And institutions should be monitoring key risks and control effectiveness on a continuous basis. This will get to allow institutions to identify weaknesses early and respond before those weaknesses are exploited. And ultimately, Choma, just for my final word, organizations that invest in proactive assurance will be far better equipped to prevent financial crime than those that only react after an incident has occurred. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I think I'm trying to read some charts, and then someone is saying you cannot view the slide. Sorry, there was no slide that was being presented. We were just having conversations and discussions, and we've heard a lot from our panelists, and they've taken us through the story of what they are seeing, or what we are seeing actually in our different organizations, in our different jurisdictions. We're also gone ahead to see how these things can be better, how collaboration can help us do better, even as financial crime fighters. But then before we finally leave, we would like to also give you, our amiable listeners and participants, you've been so awesome. You've been attending, listening attentively. You've been participating, and we cannot leave here without asking you if you have some questions, if you need some clarity. All right, so we officially open the floor for question and answers, but this is going to be very, very brief because of time. All right, we've actually kind of overshot the time, and apologies for that. We're just trying to make sure that nobody leaves here without being satisfied. Okay, so if you have some questions or maybe a question, please put it in the chat box. And if you want to speak, you could just raise your hand, and we'll just probably take 2 questions, and then we can call it a day. I believe that's okay. So I think we have in the chat box already. And then I hope our panelists are also ready to respond. I don't think this is a question, but Ali Sharif said we need to have something like Interpol in order to break the barrier. Okay, if I get what you mean, the Interpol are already, or needs already, when it comes to crypto investigations, digital asset investigations, Web3, and all that. So we are all in this together. How can KYC? Is anybody?
Sharma, sorry to cut you off. He has his hands off, Ali Sharif. So I don't know if he wants to speak.
Oh, I wasn't seeing that. Okay, so sorry. Okay. Thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. Okay, please, Ali Sharif, kindly go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, and let me be brief. I don't know if you can hear me, please.
Yes.
All right. The reason why I made mention of that is that when one of the speakers is talking about the barrier, for example, if there was a case in Ghana, for you to have a court order in Nigeria, or vice versa. So I think there is a need for the financial institutions to have some sort of a collaboration in order to have a kind of like a power or an authority, just like that of Interpol, in order to be able to control the movement of money as soon as possible. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. I think maybe after we'll speak to that, but from experience, right? we know that when it comes to maybe digital assets or virtual assets, we are yet to get those collaboration. It's because we know that EMLA doesn't work. But what I know is that most times when let's say requests are sent from our own Interpol to other jurisdictions, I've witnessed that firsthand. They will let you know, they will tell you that you should bring your court order from British Virgin Island, that they don't honor those ones from our courts or our systems. I've witnessed that firsthand. So we have a lot of let's say mitigants that we are trying to maybe clear out of the way, but that's for that. But I think I will also invite Arthur to speak to that later, but let's see if we can get another question that will go to him and then he takes everything together. All right, thank you. So how can KYC AML quality control prevent fraud, since fraudsters are using AL, that's artificial intelligence or whatever it is, what machine learning is ML, AL is AI. I mean, that's what you wanted to type. So please, who is going to answer that from the panelists?
Let me take that.
Thank you.
Okay, so yes, AI has raised the bar. AI has raised the caliber of KYC. Yeah, it has raised the caliber of what KYC has to catch, right? We are seeing the deep fakes. We are seeing, we're having to beat liveness checks. We are seeing the synthetic identities that have been stitched. All of those things. But the answer is that quality control cannot be a one-time checkpoint, right? It can't be a one-time thing. It needs to be continuous. That means that, liveness checks that used to be, an active challenge, not just a selfie match. It needs to be something that is happening on a continuous basis, not just at the point of onboarding. Even when you have AI systems that are helping with this, it shouldn't just happen at the beginning or entry stage. Occasionally, even based on high risk behaviors or out of pattern behaviors, should trigger those kind of checks. And with those things happening on a continuous basis, it would help to, flag these risks much faster and better. So I think bottom line is AI is the biggest threat to KYC right now, but it is also the best tool in flagging this too. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I agree with that. In fact, if you can build AI agents, I can. If you can build AI agents as maybe a crypto investigator or a compliance officer or fraud investigator, then you have a very good skill, really, because it will help you attack all these fraudsters or mitigate. So how are we balancing? I'm trying to read. How are we balancing privacy regulations? I think this has to do with, okay, maybe Mr. Ransford can help us. How are we balancing privacy regulations like privacy laws with sharing actionable fraud indicators with other institutions? And just because of time, you could also touch on what would you say should be the relationship between the risk management and the audit functions in an organization. Please clarify from an organizational design and operation perspective, please. I believe, Mr. Ransford, I believe you can do justice to these two questions for us, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Choma. Let me pick it from the very last one. So the risk functions are supposed to be more proactive. Internal control, fraud management, operational risk, compliance. Those days when these departments become reactive should be gone. Okay, lessons learned. Now, the beautiful marriage between these functions and internal audit should be the point that every audit finding should fuse into the risk management process. So that what did the auditors find? What were the loopholes? It should strengthen the risk functions and the procedures. The same thing if there is an investigation, if there is a fraud risk assessment, whatever the finding, it should also go into the audit process and the audit plan to make it better. That is the beauty of it. I have seen institutions where the auditors and these functions are fighting among themselves for superiority and all that. It shouldn't even happen. It shouldn't happen. Now, the second question on, I think, where we can draw the line between data protection and privacy, and if you can just give me a hint on it, but I think it's something related to that. I think that we need to, if you come to Ghana now, the cost of verifying, doing a liveness check on the Ghana card, that's a biometric verification platform, it's 15 cedis, which is more than about $1.50, almost $1.5. That's too expensive. Now, how do investigators get access to the database? Because there's a Privacy Data Protection Act, and you also need to work fast. Somebody has done something. I have his ID. How do I access it? I need to go and move a motion in the court, let the court, sit and decide. By that time, the money is gone, the people are gone. We need to create, if you like, a special avenue on how we can work behind the scenes and do not abuse data protection and privacy. At the same time, we are fighting crime. And I'll give you an example. If the Interpol and the FBI and the rest are operating, I do not think that they go according to these protocols. It's actually an investment to make sure that this data that is shared and all that is not abused. The key issue in all these things is trust. Because the people who are supposed to take decisions on how data, is used are even scared because, forgive my language, but I think there's some level of reality within the West African region. We've seen politicians amounts worth, and the same laws that they are supposed to pass, if they allow us to be having access to data and information, they get scared. Therefore, politicians who are supposed to implement the laws that are supposed to allow investigators work to prevent financial crimes are actually putting laws to hinder the progress of this fight. So we need to create avenue without compromising data and privacy. At the same time, give the speed that the fighters need to be able to deal with the prevention and the detection and response to financial crimes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You did justice to those questions. So Ezekiel's hands are up. So I think he'll be I also have a question in the chat, but let's hear from him. And then before the person answering your question will take the two questions as well. So Ezekiel, just briefly, please ask your question very briefly, please.
All right, thank you so much, Choma. My question is quite personal, so I'm going to drive that straight to the point. I have experience with this issue around fraud. I like to keep the company anonymous, yeah. But because of this kind of discussion, I like Choma said, if you want, maybe guys.
We can't hear you again, or is it just me?
You want to know more. That's why I'm asking in a finance house, yeah. And says, oh, I woke up early in the morning and I saw unwarranted deductions in my wallet, and I never applied for a withdrawal, and I saw 50,000 naira in 4 places moved from my wallet to another account which I wasn't aware of, and the next thing I saw was 500,000. I mean, it has increased, and the customer is calling the company, and the account officer, and the account officer is reaching out to the management of executive management, and saying what's going on, and this customer has a lot of money in the finance house. It poses a threat or a risk to the company. So my question is, as a compliance officer that I am, I need clarification. Of course, my jurisdiction is not in that fraud detection space, but although I have some skills in that. But my question is, because of this session now, I would like to speak to. I think one of the panelists was saying, they go for the compliance officers. They say the wealth and management officers, they always after the compliance officers to know where the revenues are coming, where the deposits are coming in. We need more deposits. We face that a lot where I am. So my question is, how do I solve that issue? How do I come in? How do I prove a solution? Because the financiers is at the risk here. Is at the risk of losing millions. I mean, hundreds of millions. So what's the way forward? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question, but I think I'll allow an operator to actually talk about it and also speak to the question from Lucky that says we have a serious financial crime called Yahoo in Nigeria. That's a new thing anyway. Please, what can financial crime investigators do to nip the horrible trend in the book? I don't think that's a new trend, but let's hear from, I think Oluwasegun, I think you can assist Ezekiel here because you're also in this space as well. Are you here, Oluwasegun? Hello, Oluwasegun. Are you on the call or have you left us? Oh. Am I being audible? Or is it just me?
Yes, yes, you are. I can hear you clearly.
Okay. So since Oluwasegun is not here, okay, so let's I'm trying to get the best person that would answer this. Okay, so any panelist can actually answer this. Anybody that's available.
Okay, let me try to take this. So Ezekiel, if I get your question well, you work with a finance house, a customer is losing funds, it's living in bits and pieces and it's increasing and you're asking what to do, if that is correct. Um, so for me, the first thing is to stop the bleeding. There's already fraud happening, and before you even start digging deep, you first need to stop that bleeding. What do I mean by stopping the bleeding? You freeze the account, you place a PND, is it a PND, PNC? You have to do all of that. And if it's not your duty to do it, you have to ensure, the right thing. If it's customer support, you instruct them. If it's a fraud desk team, you instruct them. But that needs to happen. And if it's a technological issue, it needs to be unplugged. If it's an API connection issue, it needs to be unplugged. It doesn't matter what funds will be going out until you determine what exactly is happening. So that's the first thing, stopping the bleeding before you commence investigations. And in terms of commencing investigations, there are steps and guides for investigations, right? Knowing what has happened, is it the same device? How did the transaction happen? Is it, with customers, same password and PIN, same geolocation, is the funds going to an account the user has sent funds to before, or, are the names of the beneficiaries similar to what are on the customer statements in the past? You follow the money. Where has the funds gone to? What bank? Every bank in Nigeria, not just bank, in fintechs too, even in telcos and as well as crypto exchanges now. Everybody has a fraud desk team, and the next step is to contact that fraud desk team, escalating those transactions, giving the amount, date, time, all of those information, and informing them to restrict such accounts, providing salvage balances, and even sharing where funds have gone to, as well as BVN. In Nigeria, for instance, because I'm assuming that's where this case is, every institution has signed, a fraud desk service level agreement, I would assume, right? There's a service level agreement in place championed by NIPS. So by virtue, it's mandating and stipulating specific time frame to respond and specific type of information you must provide when you receive an intelligence from a fraud desk of another team. So, but this is just me giving high level of what to do, but you need to first determine, dig deeper to know what exactly has happened. What kind of situation are you being faced with? Is it a case of unauthorized transaction? There are different segments of it. Or is it a case of, business email compromise, a case of insider fraud? But first thing is to stop the bleeding before diving into all the other areas and even pursuing, funds before you get to other parts of the investigations, right? But we can talk more on this. You can reach out to the facilitators too, because I believe what you're asking, we might not have gotten the question deeper, right? And it might not be something to discuss so largely. So if you feel free, you can reach out to the organizers. So then to the other question, Yahoo Yahoo. So that, Yahoo Yahoo as it is, it sits at the, intersection of financial crime, youth unemployment, societal decay, societal lapses, failure in family that is supposed to be the foundation of, societal values, a lot of things, right? So it needs one fix alone won't work for it. So it needs to be an institutional fix, right? But on the investigative side, the pattern is recognizable, right? You're looking at a young account holder suddenly receiving, transfers from maybe multiple unrelated, foreign senders or cross-border transactions. These are often some of the signs, right? Transactions that they've never received before. These are some of the signs, fundings from cross-border cards. These are some of the signs. And when you start asking them, they'll tell you, oh, I'm expecting this money. Even the senders of the funds, the card depositors too, let's say for card transactions, they will tell you, they'll give you evidences that they authorize the transaction. Obviously, the supposed cases have not gone bad at that time, right? So there's a lot to do there, but there are also patterns to, pick out from those kind of things, patterns to see, to, identify them. And if you look at these patterns from the transactions, the amounts, the speed of how they withdraw it, how they utilize it, you should be able to pick out some of the typologies within it. And then the second aspect is, following the money, right? Following the money past the first hop. That is one way of, pursuing the funds, not just what did they do immediately. After immediately receiving the funds, where did the funds move to? After that, where did the funds move to? Those are one, stages of, stopping the chain, not just on who the beneficiary is, but following it through to the end, right? And there are so many ways to tackle this, but another area is, law enforcement. We keep seeing different law enforcement playing, role in this. The EFCC, the Yoko, they are playing lots of roles around fighting this. And Yahoo Yahoo is not in Nigeria alone, right? Romance scam is not, it's not in Nigeria alone. It's in Africa. It's not even in Africa alone. It's in Pakistan. It's a huge thing, right? I've seen, situations where some people in some countries, full-blown setup, call center setup, impersonating certain African country, right? So it's a huge full scam, and there are so many things to do to, fight it. And it's not just one approach, but, foundational approaches starting with family, the society itself, certain environments are encouraging these things, even from the grassroots. So a lot needs to be done collectively. Different institutions you're working with, the capacity to flag the red flags, to see what typologies exist, to see what patterns exist, to flag them immediately. And this is just me rounding up here.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Thank you for stepping in to answer those questions, and they were quite insightful. And I hope, Ezekiel, you got the response you were seeking for. And to everyone that participated in this particular session, let me start with the participants. Warm thank you for actually staying till this moment and also asking questions. Of course, that made the whole flow interesting. And so the amazing panelists, you've brought your wealth of knowledge, and we don't take it for granted. Actually, from here, I've taken down a whole lot. And just to share a few, I've understood that, okay, we need to even know how to segregate our customers, treat them in segments according to the risk that they pose as well. Of course, we need to also go around capacity development, all right, building capacity, knowledge sharing as well. And I think Derek mentioned about independent assurance function, which is also still very important taken from Oluwasegun that talked about the checker and maker, which is still very important. So every one of the panelists have made valid points, and I believe your notes are also filled. And please, let's also go back to practice what we've also learned. And I wouldn't forget to also thank my co-moderator, Rabia, even as I also hand over to her to finally bring the entire session to an end. So this is us closing out on the panel session. Thank you so much for being attentive. Thank you, everyone. Rabia, are you still with me? I'll
Yes,
hand over.
yeah. Yes, I'm here, Ms. Chioma, and I've taken over the baton from you. Thank you for handing it over to me. And I will just take like 30 seconds before I hand over for us to watch the videos and then for the coordinator to round up and close officially. And what has struck me so far is that we came in all here this morning talking about financial crime borders, but something interesting has happened over the couple of hours is the commitment shown by people. I have relatives that are about to attend a wedding and loved ones that are about to go to the beach right now, and then friends and family that have decided to join us, and fellow colleagues that decided that they'll take the Saturday off and join us. You all are the real heroes, and we appreciate you so much. I can see the quality of that and the concern and the genuine care for what we're about to do and for the entire AML CFT and the anti-fraud ecosystem. And this is quite important. So also to our keynote speakers, Adesola, we appreciate you so much. We've picked a lot. My note is full and my brain is packed right now. And to my co-moderator, Chioma, you've been so pleasurable. You've been interesting. You've brought energy into the system. I feel like when my energy is low, yours is higher a bit more. So thank you so much. And I would like to appreciate our panelists, Mr. Arthur, Ransford, Derek, Japheth, and Oluwasegun. You guys have impacted so much to us. It feels like this is a university course I've attended today as well. And to everyone else that has joined us, like I said, you are our real heroes, because we wouldn't be having this conversation with ourselves alone without you, without your interesting questions that has stirred some discourse in this session as well. So we all know that Beyond Borders is not just where financial crime lives, it is also where this community lives as well. And today you have shown us exactly why all of this truly matters. So I would like you all to go ahead and pay attention to the video that will be played next. And after the video, we'll have a proper wrap-up by the coordinator, Mr. Emmanuel. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Welcome to Rablo's Counter-Fraud Learning Center, the leading anti-fraud and compliance-focused training and consulting firm in West Africa.
For more than a decade, Rabload has been dedicated to advancing integrity, accountability, and excellence through practical learning, research, and collaboration. As the sole authorized trainer of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners in West Africa, Rabload has built a strong reputation for quality and impact. For over 13 years, we have trained and supported over 1,000 certified fraud examiners, many of whom now hold key positions both in the public and private sectors.
Our work goes beyond certification. We've designed bespoke training programs, masterclasses, and executive workshops tailored to the realities of today's complex business environment. Our programs equip professionals with the skills to detect, prevent, and respond effectively to fraud and financial crimes.
Rabload has now become a hub for knowledge exchange across Africa, partnering with regulators, financial institutions, and development organizations to strengthen ethical standards and build resilient systems.
As technology reshapes how fraud is perpetrated and prevented, we continue to evolve, integrating artificial intelligence, data analytics, and modern investigative tools into our training framework to prepare professionals for the challenges of the digital era.
We are committed to building a fraud-aware society across Africa. Through our training programs in countries such as Ghana and the Gambia, we continue to equip individuals and institutions with knowledge to combat fraud. We also engage directly with schools, creating early awareness and empowering young minds with the right values and understanding to identify and prevent fraudulent activities. For organizations, we collaborate with teams across reputable institutions, delivering tailored training sessions focused on fraud detection, prevention, and control. At Rablo Woods, our mission is simple: to build capacity, inspire integrity, and empower professionals to make lasting impact. We invite you to connect, learn, and grow with us as we continue to champion the future of fraud prevention and ethical leadership across Africa. For professionals looking to take a stand against fraud, you can become a certified fraud examiner by visiting our website at www.rablowoods.com to get registered. For more inquiries, send us an email at info@rablowoods.com or call 070 4444 0248.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I believe you can hear me. Thank you so much for engaging with us in the last couple of hours as we come to the end of today's webinar, where we have discussed Beyond Borders, the evolution of financial crime in a connected world. I want to sincerely appreciate every one of us, who have made our time to join us in this conversation. The conversation has actually reminded us that, financial crime is no longer limited by borders. The threats we face are becoming more connected. I mean, they are more sophisticated as well, and then more technology driven. Therefore, our response must also become more collaborative, more intelligence led, and more future ready. So we've done a very good job, by dissecting this topic. On behalf of Rablo Woods Counterfraud Learning Center, I sincerely appreciate our keynote speaker for setting the tone, such depth. Distinguished moderators, thank you for guiding the conversation. I mean, they brought in the energy, they brought in excellence, they were able also to ensure that we experience balance. That was a very good one to note. You helped create the right flow, ask the right questions, and you ensure that the discussions remained engaging, and I'm truly grateful for that. So, our esteemed panelists, we are deeply grateful for the wealth of knowledge, the experience, the real-world perspective you brought to the session. Your insights have helped us better understand the changing dynamics of money laundering, financial manipulation, cross-sector fraud risks, and many more across institutions. To all our participants, you guys are amazing. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for engaging with us. Thank you for being part of this wonderful conversation. Your presence shows your commitment to professional growth and to the wider fight against fraud and corruption in the country. Rablo Woods, like the video has shown, we are committed to building capacity, raising future fraud fighters, and we like to also create platforms where professionals can learn, connect and respond to these emerging threats that we've discussed. We believe that knowledge is one of the strongest tools in the fight against financial crime, and today's webinar has proven that to us, right? So we want to once again appreciate us as we leave. I'd like to also announce to us that, from time to time we have sessions like this, and if you are called upon, to speak, please do well to engage with us. We're always proud and always happy to engage with professionals from different industries, different sectors. So we deeply appreciate you all, and we look forward to welcoming you to future programs with Rablo Woods. Thank you very much. Until next time, bye for now. And just before we go, I would like us to take group pictures. Please do well to turn on your video, your camera, so that we can take pictures. And I also saw a question in the chat. We'll do well to share the recordings with every one of us, so that's not a problem. We want to create a lasting impact on everyone that has attended, has taken out the time to attend this session. So please do well to turn on your videos. It'd be nice to put a face to the names. It's always a privilege, always a pleasure to have you on call. I believe the IT guys are doing justice to that. We'd like to have more pictures or more videos turned on so that we can take a picture. All right. I think I just wanted to confirm. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We look forward to, having every one of you in our future engagement. Thank you to our moderators. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our keynote speaker who did justice, by laying the foundation. Thank you, and see you in our next session. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.